Indeed, if he hadn't come across Duan Lingfeng this time round, Jian Wushuang would be in big trouble. Perhaps he could think of a way to survive in the hands of Zidongwang, Xianxia and Universe God Luing. However, he would definitely need to give up his white blaze fruits. Duan Lingfeng, you are completely uninterested in the white blaze fruit? Jian Wushuang looked at Duan Lingfeng. That's right. Duan Lingfeng nodded his head indifferently. If that's the case, I shall not give you white blaze fruits. I have armor here with me and I obtained it from Universe God Xiong Fu previously. Please take it. Jian Wushuang took out some black armor. The black armor was a real God-level chaos unique treasure, and it was Universe God Xiong Fu's treasure to protect his body with. After seeing the black armor, Duan Lingfeng frowned. Jian Wushuang, you should know that I helped you not for the white blaze fruit, and not for this armor. I know, Jian Wushuang laughed. However, I still need your help from here on. The stronger you are, the greater your help will be to me. This armor should be able to raise your fighting capabilities slightly. Jian Wushuang could tell long ago that the divine weapons and defensive armors that Duan Lingfeng used were first-rate Universe God-level chaos unique treasures. In spite of that, he was still able to push back Zidongwang. If he had real God-level armor, his abilities would definitely rise considerably. You want me to team up with you? Duan Lingfeng looked over. That's right. Jian Wushuang did not hide the truth. I have 9 white blaze fruits with me now. Hence, I am definitely a popular target. Since so many universe gods in this cave want to kill me and I'm alone, if I were to come across a situation like just now, I would be unable to deal with it. However, if I were to team up with you, it would be different. Duan Lingfeng had been ranked 3rd previously. After his match with Zidongwang, it proved that he had abilities to rank 2nd on the Universe God ranking list. In the entire cave, probably only the God-destroying king was superior to him. Hence, if Jian Wushuang were to team up with him, he could move around the cave freely. In addition, during my match with Xianxia and Universe God Luing just now, I benefited considerably. Next, I have no plans to continue moving around to fight for the white blaze fruits. Instead, I want to find a place to train for a period of time. During the process of my training, I will naturally need an expert like you to protect me. Jian Wushuang emphasized the word expert intentionally. I see. Duan Lingfeng nodded his head and took the black armor immediately. I shall accept this armor. After seeing that, Jian Wushuang revealed a smile. On the 2nd level of the cave, one of the greatest commotions was when a total of 8 white blaze fruits appeared at the same time. This piece of news spread through the whole cave in a moment, just like a hurricane. Other pieces of news that were spread included the shocking match between the 5 experts Jian Wushuang, the white-robed swordsman, Duan Lingfeng, Zidongwang, Xianxia, and Universe God Luing. These 5 experts were part of the top 10 of the Universe God ranking list. In particular, Zidongwang and the white-robed swordsman were ranked 2nd and 3rd respectively. However, the end result was, during the match between Zidongwang and the white-robed swordsman, Zidongwang was at a disadvantage. Xianxia and Universe God Luing had teamed up and they hoped to kill Jian Wushuang. However, both of them were unable to do anything to Jian Wushuang at all, even after demonstrating all of their tricks. As soon as the news got out, countless universe gods were astonished. In the vast hall outside the cave, many almighties, including the real gods from various forces, also got the news before long. After that, all of them gasped in admiration. This Jian Wushuang's luck is really good. Since he was targeted by Zidongwang and Xianxia at the same time, even if he didn't die, he would have to give up quite a number of white blaze fruits. That was what I thought at first. However, who could expect him to come across the white-robed swordsman at that critical moment? Moreover, the white-robed swordsman is actually good friends with him. Although Jian Wushuang is a disciple of the lineage of Star, he is good friends with the white-robed swordsman. Could the white-robed swordsman be in the lineage of Star as well? No. The white-robed swordsman is definitely not in the lineage of Star. This point has already been confirmed. Perhaps the both of them got to know one another while they were traveling in the outside world. No matter what, Jian Wushuang has teamed up with the white-robed swordsman. Hence, it will be difficult to get the white blaze fruits from him again. Many experts who were present understood. One was ranked 5th in the Universe God ranking list, while the other one was one of the top 3. Moreover, at that very moment, he had been acknowledged as the number 2. Since the 2 experts had teamed up, not many people in the cave would dare to provoke them. Lei Chao. Seems like your lineage of star is destined to benefit greatly. I agree. Since Jian Wushuang and the white-robed swordsman has teamed up, probably no one in the cave will lay their hands on his 9 white blaze fruits. The real gods were also chatting and laughing wantonly. My lineage of star does not wish to have great benefits. However, since luck is at the doorstep, we cannot reject it. Lei Chao laughed apathetically and he felt more relaxed. After that, he messaged Jian Wushuang and questioned, Jian Wushuang, what is your status now? I'm all right. The clash with Xianxia and Zidong Wang did not result in any losses. Jian Wushuang replied immediately. How about your good friend, the white-robed swordsman? Lei Chao continued asking. He's with me, Jian Wushuang said. That's great. Lei Chao continued speaking. Jian Wushuang, listen up. Now you have already obtained 9 white blaze fruits. To the lineage of star, this is already enough. Don't hope for too much. After all, you are now the target of everyone. Hence, for the time being, you don't need to travel around to fight other white blaze fruits. Please find a place and stay put until this fight comes to a complete end. Ideally, get your good friend to stay with you the whole way. If there is a need, give him a few white blaze fruits. Haha. Lord Lei Chao, don't worry. That good friend of mine has agreed to team up with me. Moreover, he is not the least bit interested in the white blaze fruit. Hence, I gave him the real god-level armor that I obtained from killing Universe God Xiongfu previously. Jian Wushuang giggled. That's for the best. Lei Chao nodded his head and terminated the transmission. On the second level of Wu Bei's cave, Jian Wushuang was sitting down with his legs crossed in the deepest part of a cave, which was situated halfway up a mountain, and was storing Lei Chao's transmission token slowly. Even without Lord Lei Chao saying so, I have no plans to participate in the upcoming fights for the white blaze fruits. Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently. Since the moment of the opening of the second level of the cave to the current point in time, 37 white blaze fruits had appeared. Hence, there were 13 fruits that had not appeared yet. Therefore, the fight was still ongoing. However, Jian Wushuang had no plans to participate. He had already obtained a total of 9 white blaze fruits and was satisfied with that. For the remaining time, he would allow the universe gods to continue fighting for the white blaze fruits. He himself had planned to stay in the mountain all along. As for Duan Lingfeng, he was inside a neighboring cave, refining the real god-level armor. On the second level of Wu Bei's cave, Zidong Wang stood side by side with Xin Zhu. As for Universe God Luing, he wasn't in the same troop as Zidong Wang and Xianxia originally. Hence, after fighting a battle against Jian Wushuang, he left on his own. Zidong Wang, did you know you would be defeated by the white-robed swordsman? Xianxia asked with his eyebrows tightly knitted. He has the upper hand just by a slight bit. To really defeat me, he doesn't have the ability. Zidong Wang bellowed. Xianxia raised his eyebrows but didn't comment further. However, he sneered in his head. Regardless of if Zidong Wang was willing to admit it, he wasn't the white-robed swordman's match. That was a fact. If the new Universe God ranking list were to be released, the white-robed swordman's ranking would definitely be before Zidong Wang's. Humph! This won't end so easily. Zidong Wang harumphed coldly. What are you planning to do? Xianxia looked at him. Isn't the white-robed swordsman strong? I can do nothing about him, but someone else can. When I was fighting against him, I left a tracing mark on him. He can't escape so easily. There was a gleam of light in Zidong Wang's eyes. The very next moment, he plunged towards the void on the other side. Although Xianxia was confused, he followed anyway. The fight for the white blaze fruits continued. Occasionally, there'd be bursts of white blaze fruits. There were only 2 pieces to 3 pieces at one goal, not like the previous time when 8 white blaze fruits had come to the world at the same time. Even so, the massacre was still mad and there were more deaths that followed. In the blink of an eye, a few days passed. The 50 pieces of white blaze fruits on the second level of the save came to the world, and they had their respective owners too. Birum. In the void, real God Wu Bei's blurry image, which was formed by his consciousness, reappeared. The fight for white blaze fruits on the second level of the cave has already ended. I will give you another 1 month's time. A month later, the third level will be opened. On the third level, which is also the last level, there isn't any white blaze fruit, but there's a white blaze fruit tree. Then, the blurry image that had been formed by real God Wu Bei's consciousness vanished into thin air again. In the lofty palace in the cave, there was a great commotion. As expected, there is really a third level. This mad man, he saved the white blaze fruit tree for the last level. White blaze fruit tree, that is the most precious thing in the cave. Those white blaze fruits were just fruits that were grown on the white blaze fruit tree. Various experts, including Almighties, were all hot with excitement. White blaze fruit made various Almighties drool, but a white blaze fruit tree made all the Almighties go insane. Many years ago, many Almighties had gotten into a crazy fight and bloody massacre to get the saplings of the white blaze fruit tree. However, it fell into the hands of real God Wu Bei in the end. But it was a mature white blaze fruit tree this time, and it was even more precious. 1 month. The universe gods in the cave started preparing themselves. The air was filled with the atmosphere of massacre. The chilliness in the void was bone-piercing. A scrawny, pale-looking young man who looked like a sickly person walked forward slowly. His appearance was extremely frail, but when he walked and passed by the countless universe gods, whoever saw him wanted to immediately run away without hesitation in shock. No one dared to be within a 1,000-mile range of him, let alone block his way or challenge to for a fight. Ever since the young man had come to Wu Bei's cave, he almost never took action, but he had got 3 white blaze fruits. Just then, ha! The pale young man lifted his head. In the void before him, there were 2 figures charging towards him. Very soon, they stopped before him. The 2 figures that descended were Zidongwang and Xianxia. However, Zidongwang, who normally assumed a haughty air, looked rather humble. The way he looked at the young man seemed to have a tinge of reverence too. God-destroying king, long time no see, Zidongwang greeted. God-destroying king, Xianxia greeted too. God-destroying king. The young man who looked pale and extremely frail was the one in the first place on Universe God ranking list, God-destroying king. He was the number 1 among universe gods without a doubt in eternal chaotic world. Zidongwang, Xianxia, what's up? God-destroying king glanced at both of them. Something's up, Zidongwang replied. I know that you came to Wu Bei's cave because of the Almighty behind incited you to, and the Almighty promised you something too on the premise that you would get sufficient white blaze fruits. But you only have 3 white blaze fruits on hand. It should have yet to reach the criteria that the Almighty requested, right? True, God-destroying king nodded. However, as long as I can get the white blaze fruit tree on the 3rd level, it'll do. White blaze fruit tree? Zidongwang smiled faintly. There's only 1 white blaze fruit tree, but there are so many universe gods who want to fight for it. God-destroying king, although you are powerful and you are the number 1 among all universe gods, the other universe gods will not be passive. Most likely, the universe gods will join forces to force you out. Hence, the possibility of you getting the white blaze fruit tree in the end isn't high either. Don't beat around the bush. Get straight to the point. God-destroying king's gaze was cold. Let me be frank with you then. I'd like to invite you to join forces with the 2 of us to fight against Jian Wushuang and the white-robed swordsman. You only need to kill the white-robed swordsman. If you really can't kill him, just tie him down. As for Jian Wushuang, Xianxia and I will take care of him. Jian Wushuang has a total of 9 white blaze fruits to hand, Zidongwang said. You lost to the white-robed swordsman and you want to get rid of him with my hands? God-destroying king glanced at Zidongwang. Zidongwang's gaze faltered, but he didn't deny it. He had the intention of killing Duan Lingfeng. He was arrogant and boastful. He had no choice before God-destroying king. He could only submit to him. But besides God-destroying king, He wasn't willing to accept that there was another universe god who was stronger than him. 9 white blaze fruits. I want 5 of them, God-destroying king said straightforwardly. 5 pieces. Zidongwang's facial expression changed, but he nodded anyway. Deal. Do you know Jian Wushuang and the white-robed swordsman's current location? God-destroying king asked. Of course I know. We can get there in 1 day with our traveling speed, Zidongwang replied. If so, let's depart. God-destroying king sounded cool. Very soon, the strongest formation, made up of God-destroying king, Zidongwang and Xianxia, was charging in the direction where Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng were at. However, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng had no idea about it. Duan Lingfeng knew that Zidongwang left a tracing mark on him, and he started to remove it, but he still needed more time. As for Jian Wushuang, he was at his most critical period. Halfway up a mountain, inside a provisional cave which had been opened up, Jian Wushuang was sitting down alone with his legs crossed. On the surface, he looked impervious to desires and passions. However, within the sea of consciousness, his soul fire was burning furiously. The soul and consciousness were different from a cultivator's realm. A cultivator could be in the realm of a universe god. However, his consciousness could have reached the level of a real god's. As for Jian Wushuang just then, his force of soul was trying to break past the bottleneck to the real god's level. During his early days in the Sky Sword prison, his force of soul had reached the limit of a universe god's. After honing it for another 1,000 years, his soul had achieved the critical stage of making a breakthrough. However, he lacked an opportunity to make a breakthrough. However, a few days ago, during the match between Xianxia and universe god Lu Ying, the strongest attack, 9-weight destruction, that Xianxia had used, had given his soul an impact that he had never felt before. This impact had caused his soul fire to almost fall apart. However, it was such an instant of life and death that gave rise to an opportunity for him to make a breakthrough. After that fight subsided, he immediately started to meditate in seclusion in the provisional cave that had opened up. After a few days, he reached the critical moment. Whether I fail or succeed will depend on this moment. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with a brilliant light. The soul fire in his sea of consciousness was also burning furiously, and the soul power that had accumulated to the limit a long time ago started to try to go past its limit. Boom! With a fierce impact, the bottleneck was destroyed. With that, the soul fire in Jian Wushuang's sea of consciousness started to increase madly at once. I have made a breakthrough. Jian Wushuang was extremely delighted. The flowing soul power in his sea of consciousness also started to rise at an amazing speed. In no time, his transformation ended. Force of soul, real god level. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists tightly. It was not just the force of soul that had risen. It should be known that Jian Wushuang had always been proficient in soul attacks. When he had used his soul attacks previously, his consciousness had not achieved the level of a real god's. However, almost no one could block them. At that very moment, his force of soul had achieved the level of a real god's. If he were to unleash soul attacks again, let's try it. Jian Wushuang laughed nonchalantly, and his soul power surged at once. Roar! A furious roar that seemed to appear from an abysmal hell could be heard. A black and big demonic dragon, which released shocking murderous aura, appeared fiercely. This demonic dragon was very powerful. When its body flew past the void, it ripped open the void easily. This power! Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed brilliantly. Haha! That Xianxia can use his consciousness to create headless soldiers which have the fighting capabilities of real gods. However, the power of the demonic dragon that I can create using my soul power now is also similar to that of a real god. As for the soul attacks, I have the 18 Azura Hell and secret skill of Tian Yuan. In particular, if I use the secret skill of Tian Yuan with my full power, the soul attack would definitely not be weaker than Xianxia's 9-weight destruction. It might even be slightly stronger. Jian Wushuang was over the moon. Among the universe gods, Xianxia was recognized by the eternal chaotic world as the universe god with the strongest consciousness attacks. However, at that very moment, Jian Wushuang believed that his own soul attacks were not weaker than Xianxia's. In fact, they might even be stronger. Moreover, among his soul attacks, if he were to use the divine ape from the 5-beast soul manipulation knack, he could combine his soul power with his divine power beautifully. Real god-level soul power combined with his divine power. Jian Wushuang's abilities had definitely increased greatly compared to the past. If I were to fight against Xianxia and Universe God Luing again, I would definitely not be in a difficult situation. Moreover, I might even be able to break both of them one by one. Jian Wushuang laughed apathetically. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng were sitting by a stone table and drinking wine. Duan Lingfeng, what is the power of this black armor? Jian Wushuang asked casually. Not bad. With this armor, my abilities have risen considerably compared to the past. Especially in the aspect of my divine power, Duan Lingfeng said. The black armor that Duan Lingfeng had obtained was a real god-level chaos unique treasure, and it was similar to Jian Wushuang's blood feather reincarnation armor. It also contained a secret skill which could allow one's divine power to rise. Previously, you were able to push back Zi Dongwang even without this piece of armor. But now, I am curious as to whether you have the right to compete with the god-destroying king, who is ranked first in the Universe God ranking list. Jian Wushuang jeered. No idea. Duan Lingfeng shook his head. I have heard that there is a huge gap between the first and second of the Universe God ranking list. However, I have never come across the god-destroying king. If I don't fight with him personally, I will be unable to judge. That's true. Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently, and he lifted his wine cup up. Oh! Jian Wushuang frowned abruptly. He had already sensed the 3 shadows which were within the range of his soul power. Duan Lingfeng, our old friend is here. Jian Wushuang giggled. Old friend? Zi Dongwang. Duan Lingfeng shot a glance toward Jian Wushuang. He then had a dull expression. Duan Lingfeng could no longer feel interested in Zi Dongwang just then. It's him. However, he has brought us a big surprise this time round. Jian Wushuang chuckled. His soul power had already locked on to one person. That was a pale-looking young man who looked fragile. However, it was this young man that had given Jian Wushuang a great amount of pressure. Swoosh! Swoosh! Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng plunged out from the cave immediately. They then appeared in the void on the upper end. In front of them, 3 shadows descended. Among the 3 shadows, there was Zi Dongwang and Xianxia, who Jian Wushuang was familiar with. There was also that fragile young man, God-destroying king. Both of us were still talking about the God-destroying king just now. However, who would expect him to appear in front of us straight away? Jian Wushuang had an indifferent expression and he glanced at Duan Lingfeng. Looks like you have an opportunity to fight him. Yes. Duan Lingfeng nodded his head and his eyes shone brilliantly like never before. He had come to Wu Bei's cave in order to fight against experts. At the beginning, he had defeated demon girl Ling Luo, who was ranked 3rd in the Universe God ranking list. Previously, he had also fought with Zi Dongwang and managed to push him back. At that very moment, he had obtained a real god-level chaos unique treasure and his abilities rose again. Hence, what he yearned for at the moment was to fight with the god-destroying king, the universe god who had been recognized as the number 1 among universe gods. Duan Lingfeng was filled with fighting intention. Jian Wushuang was the same as well. My force of soul has just made a breakthrough and my abilities have increased greatly. Thus, I am just about to find someone to test out my abilities. Just then, the 3 of you came. What a coincidence! Jian Wushuang stuck his tongue out and licked his lips. His eyes were also unusually cold. On the battlefield, swords were drawn and the battle was about to begin. In the void, there was a purple-haired elderly casually traveling forward casually, and he happened to pass the nearby void where Jian Wushuang and the others were at. That's it? The purple-haired elderly noticed the 5 figures in the void and suddenly looked surprised. Zi Dongwang, Xianxia, white-robed swordsman, Jian Wushuang. The last one is its god-destroying king. My God! The purple-haired elderly was astonished at the sight. He could tell that the 5 people in the void before him were obviously in 2 teams. God-destroying king, Zi Dongwang and Xianxia were in one. Jian Wushuang and white-robed swordsman were in another one. Breaking news! Breaking news! This is definitely the pinnacle of all the fights in Wu Bei's cave. The purple-haired elderly was excited and he instantly spread the news. In an instant, the entirety of Wu Bei's cave was astonished. In the lofty palace in the outside world. I knew it. I knew Zidongwang would just give up easily. As expected. Zidongwang even invited God-destroying king? God-destroying king. He is widely recognized as the #1 universe god. He's supernatural. God-destroying king Zidongwang, Xianxia teamed up. It is definitely the strongest team in Wu Bei's cave. White-robed swordsman and Jian Wushuang are really in danger this time. The experts gasped with admiration yet sighed emotionally. In the cave, countless universe gods received the news and were filled with all kinds of thoughts and emotions. Those who were near to the battlefield immediately rushed over at their fastest speeds. A team made of God-destroying king, Zidongwang and Xianxia against Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. Both could be known as the strongest team in Wu Bei's cave. Naturally, everyone was dying to witness the clash of the two strongest teams with their own eyes. In the void, the air was still and frozen entirely. After God-destroying king, Zidongwang and Xinzhu appeared. They didn't speak. However, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng knew their purpose of their visit. Duan Lingfeng, as you are looking forward to fight against God-destroying king, I shall leave the chance to you. Jian Wushuang looked at Duan Lingfeng. Are you confident? No, but I can give it a try. Duan Lingfeng looked cold as he withdrew the saber from the scabbard behind his back. A terrifying sword intention spread instantly and it was growing more and more intense. Duan Lingfeng locked his gaze onto God-destroying king. You want to challenge me? Come on, let's do it. God-destroying king looked cold too. As he spoke, he took a huge stride forward and his aura instantly soared to the peak. Just like a primeval beast, he pounded Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. This aura is pretty impressive. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. As the aura burst out, a golden long spear appeared in God-destroying king's hands. The golden long spear was covered in unique golden dragon print. As he wielded it, there was a faint roar of the dragon that reverberated. The entire heaven and earth seemed to be under his feet. The golden long spear was called Bellicose Spear. God-destroying king had an overbearing manner. Fight! Duan Lingfeng's eyes were glistening with sharpness. He roared and took a sudden step. The void under his foot instantly cracked. The 13th. Duan Lingfeng gripped the saber in his hands tightly. Under the flow of divine power, vroom. One towering crimson shadow appeared in the void. A total of 13 crimson blade shadows appeared and every one of them was ferocious. They were strong enough to strike fear into the experts in the top 30 on Universe God ranking list. But at that very moment, after the 13 crimson blade shadows appeared, they suddenly condensed and blended together. They formed a bright, glaring crimson moon. The crimson moon suddenly swung out in silence. Instantly, it spurred the entire heaven and earth to pressure God-destroying king. God-destroying king saw the scene but his gaze was still as cold as before. Just as the crimson moon was slashing down against his body, the golden bellicose spear in his hands suddenly stabbed. It was a casual stab, but it was earth-shattering. Bellicose spear contained an extermination aura. Even Jian Wushuang, Zidongwang and Xianxia who were standing far away were palpitating. This is God-destroying king. Any casual move or technique brings about boundless extermination intention. His level of comprehension of extermination doctrine is too high. Zidongwang and Xianxia saw the scene and gasped in admiration. Especially Zidongwang. He was arrogant and boastful and he was never willing to admit defeat. However, before God-destroying king, he had no courage to compete at all. It wasn't because he didn't want to challenge God-destroying king, but because their difference was just too vast. Bang! A loud thud. The void where the vigorous battle was happening instantly shattered and formed a scary void storm. In the void storm, Duan Lingfeng shook his body and at that moment, it was as though he became three people and the three Duan Lingfengs were wielding his saber all at the same time. God-destroying king was still standing there coldly, but he gripped, and the bellicose spear instantly turned into a cyclone and flew out like lightning. Dang! 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 Duan Lingfeng moved backwards, but the power in his blade light also made God-destroying king take a step back. You can make me move backwards? With that alone, you are much stronger than Zi Dongwang. God-destroying king said coldly. Duan Lingfeng didn't talk nonsense, but looked at God-destroying king solemnly. Suddenly, vroom! A boundless divine power revolved and suddenly exploded from Duan Lingfeng's body. His body increased in size twofold. He was 3 meters tall, and there were faint black ripples spreading from him. The entire universe was engulfed in darkness. The originally ferocious aura in Duan Lingfeng went more intense by a notch at that very moment. Zi Dongwang was shocked by the sight. Bastard! When he was fighting with me previously, he never performed these techniques. Zi Dongwang's face was distorted in anger. When Duan Lingfeng was fighting against him, he suppressed him with only swordsmanship and his comprehension towards doctrines. He never performed the secret skills that he was seeing then. It was obvious that Duan Lingfeng held back some power when he fought with him. Swoosh! Duan Lingfeng launched another attack. The 14th. Virum. In the void covered in darkness, there was a total of 14 crimson blade shadows that appeared from nowhere. The 14 crimson blade shadows suddenly overlapped one another and straightaway slashed. With the flawless combination of massacre doctrine and darkness doctrine among the 9 heaven god doctrines, Duan Lingfeng already burst out his strongest fighting power. Duan Lingfeng, he is really powerful. Jian Wushuang looked at Duan Lingfeng, who was going all out, and gasped with admiration. Then, he immediately glanced at Zi Dongwang and Xianxia before him. Duan Lingfeng and God-destroying king are fighting so ferociously. I can't be so relaxed. Jian Wushuang slightly lifted the corners of his lips. Blood Mountain sword had already appeared in his hands. Shall we begin? At that moment, Zi Dongwang and Xianxia looked toward Jian Wushuang. Let's not waste time and kill him now. Xianxia spoke coldly. Of course. Zi Dongwang laughed ruthlessly. He then released thick purple light from the purple gloves that he wore. Let's fight. Jian Wushuang giggled and changed his body. Swoosh! 18 shadows appeared at the same time. Kill! Zi Dongwang's eyes glowed with murderous aura and his body moved instantly. As for Xianxia, although he was standing in his original position, he was releasing his power of consciousness. In no time, 3 big headless soldiers formed in front of him. Swish! 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 As the shadows glowed continuously, Jian Wushuang appeared in front of Zi Dongwang. 9th heaven stroke. A great amount of sword essence materialized and a nemesis sword descended abruptly. As for Zi Dongwang, with a wave of his big hand, purple light burst forth, and before it collided with the nemesis sword, he clenched his right fist fiercely. Break! An unreasonable amount of power was released, and the nemesis sword, which carried an enormous amount of sword essence, was dissipated at that moment. The absurd power also forced Jian Wushuang to retreat by a few steps. When Jian Wushuang's body had just regained its posture, rustle, rustle, rustle. 3 ear-piercing sounds could be heard, and 3 dim lights appeared in Jian Wushuang's line of sight. The 3 dim lights were the long spears thrown by the 3 headless soldiers. The speed of the 3 headless soldiers was not fast. However, the speed of the spears that they tossed with their full power was shocking. Humph! Jian Wushuang gave a cold shout, and with a strange change of his body, the 3 spears passed his body. However, they did not touch any part of him. After that, Jian Wushuang's body turned back to normal in its original position. Jian Wushuang! A loud cry could be heard. Afterward, black mist filled the sky and headed toward Jian Wushuang like the ferocious mouth of a beast. The black mist also contained many consciousness attacks like big millstones with the intention of crushing Jian Wushuang completely. This move again? Jian Wushuang's eyes turned serious. However, he stood still in his position and allowed the 9 consciousnesses to attack him. After the 9 consciousnesses struck Jian Wushuang, he gave a groan, and the black mist which filled the sky dissipated soon after. What? Xianxia was shocked. Previously, when he had teamed up with Universe God Lu Ying to fight Jian Wushuang, he also used the strongest move of his. In the end, Jian Wushuang was affected greatly and almost killed. However, when he used it again at that moment, Jian Wushuang had actually managed to block it so easily. Do you think that I will suffer under the same move twice? Jian Wushuang laughed coldly. This move of Xianxia was indeed fearsome. Previously, Jian Wushuang's force of soul was only at the peak of a universe god. Hence, it would be very difficult for him to block such an attack. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang's force of soul had already achieved the level of a real god's. If he were to come across the same attack, he could block it easily. So what if you blocked it? You still need to die. Xianxia was filled with murderous intent. The three giant headless soldiers then stepped into the void and headed straight for Jian Wushuang. I am not interested in you. After shooting a glance at Xianxia, Jian Wushuang's soul power surged. Roar! 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 Three furious roars which shook the heavens could be heard. Three black demonic dragons shrouded in murderous aura then appeared fiercely. The power of the three demonic dragons were astonishing. In an instant they clashed with the three headless soldiers. I shall let them have fun with you. Jian Wushuang chuckled and his eyes locked onto Zi Dongwang, who was in front of him. Zi Dongwang, I heard that you are proficient in close combat fights. Today, let me have a showdown with you. As soon as the words left his mouth, a giant golden divine ape appeared from Jian Wushuang's body. At the same time, a tremendous amount of flames was released, forming a crimson sea of fire, and Jian Wushuang was the emperor of the crimson sea of fire. 5 beast soul manipulation Nak's strongest divine ape and the Scarlet Kingdom were used at the same time. What was different from before was that Jian Wushuang's force of soul had achieved the real god level. Hence, when he unleashed the divine ape move, its power was a lot greater than before. At that moment, Jian Wushuang's divine power and soul power combined beautifully. Hence, his fighting capabilities were a lot greater compared to when he had fought Universe God Lu Ying and Xianxia. Kill! Jian Wushuang's body moved like lightning. As Zi Dongwang was clad in armor, his body became slightly bigger and his aura was raised to its peak as well. At that moment, the two of them did not hold back. Both of them had unleashed their full power. In no time, both of them clashed head-on. Boom! It was another direct clash. However, Zi Dongwang did not gain the upper hand this time around. His power has risen? Just now, he was inferior to me and I annihilated his sword principles with one palm. However, now, his power is actually equal to mine. Zi Dongwang's expression turned grave. However, his face was glowing with madness. Jian Wushuang, didn't you want to compete with me in a close combat fight? Today, I shall grant you your wish. Zi Dongwang bellowed. Ha! Bring it on. Jian Wushuang's eyes were burning with excitement. In no time, both of them fought again. However, this time around, it was a close combat fight. Bump! 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 Shocking sounds of collision echoed across the universe. Jian Wushuang's sword principles, Zi Dongwang's palm skills and fist skills, as well as both of their close combat abilities, were completely unleashed. As for their speeds, they were so fast that no one could keep their eyes on their figures. Boom! A lofty mountain at the side was split open. What followed that was a void that was collapsing 1,000 miles away. Next, many giant sword marks, which covered hundreds of miles, appeared on the ground. Intense, exciting, earth-shaking. Their intense fight had reached the climax. Such a crazy clash continued for 10 breaths' time. With the sound of an explosion, the two shadows separated again. Both of them then stood in their respective positions with thousands of miles in between them. As for both of them at that very moment, Jian Wushuang's hair was slightly messy, and there were 2 clear palm prints on his blood-feather reincarnation armor which were left behind by Zi Dongwang. Zi Dongwang was no better off. The armor on his body had 2 sword marks. Moreover, there was a bit of blood at the corners of his mouth. Ha! Zi Dongwang, is your close combat ability only like this? Jian Wushuang's hearty laughter could be heard. Humph, you left 2 sword marks on my body and I have also left 2 palm prints on your body. Hence, we are the same. What is it that you are proud of? Zidongwang bellowed coldly. Indeed. However, my body defense is stronger than yours. Even though I have taken the full force of your 2 palms, my injuries are not obvious. But what about you? Jian Wushuang sneered. Zidongwang's face changed. The intense battle between him and Jian Wushuang earlier was actually too close to call. However, due to the difference in their defensive powers, he was injured, but Jian Wushuang was totally fine. It was something he couldn't accept. Previously, the white-robed swordsman. Now, Jian Wushuang. No. There's already God-destroying king above me. I definitely can't stand a second person above me, let alone a third. Jian Wushuang, you have to die. There was an unprecedented insanity twinkling in Zidongwang's eyes. The moment he roared, Hong! A boundless purple divine light flowed out from Zidongwang. He clasped his hands together and fathomless divine power flowed into his palms. A terrifying power slowly condensed in his hands. Want to go all out now? Jian Wushuang concentrated. He could tell that the next move that Zidongwang was going to take wouldn't be insignificant. If not mistaken, it should be Zidongwang's staunchest unique skill. Unique skill? Jian Wushuang shook his head in silence. He knew that Zidongwang was going to perform his strongest unique skill, but Jian Wushuang couldn't give play to a matching sword principle to fight evenly. In terms of unique skill, he was really at an absolute disadvantage. No choice. He was only a universe god in the second heaven after all. Even if he were to have the ability to create a unique skill of a higher level, he still couldn't create one. He couldn't match evenly with his sword principle, but Jian Wushuang had another technique. Rumble. There was boundless divine power flowing in Jian Wushuang's body along with the ancient god power that he possessed. At that very moment, they were all flowing into his right index finger intensely. His index finger gave out an intense golden light, and a bolt of earth-shattering power continued to accumulate. After a good while, Jian Wushuang and Zidongwang were done preparing to launch their moves. Jian Wushuang. Zidongwang let out a roar and his voice soared to the 9th heaven. Come on! Jian Wushuang let out a chilly glare. The next moment, both of them launched attacks at one another at the same time. Hong! A towering hand that was formed by purple divine power appeared in the universe. The huge purple hand almost formed a substantiated purple crystal and covered the vast void. It slowly padded, and the space it passed constantly made explosive sounds. In the end, it shattered like a pane of glass. Before the huge purple hand, there was an ancient hand that extended. The ancient hand was dark gold, and an enormous amount of divine power concentrated in one huge finger in the end. The finger in dark gold poked through the void. Zidongwang's strongest unique skill. Jian Wushuang also went all out to perform his strongest attack technique, Ancient God Fourth Finger. The power of both techniques shook heaven and earth. Suddenly, they collided head-on. At the beginning, there wasn't any vigorous noise, only 2 bolts of boundless divine power constantly compressing and clashing, as though there were 2 worlds constantly melting. But the melting only lasted for a short while. Birum. A shapeless shockwave suddenly soared up from the middle where the 2 bolts of power collided. Then it swept out with no mercy. Within the 100-mile range, Xianxia was still standing there as he manipulated the 3 headless warriors to fight against the 3 demonic dragons. However, even with him manipulating the 3 headless warriors personally, they were only evenly matched with the 3 demonic dragons. Then, the shockwave swept out and glided against the 3 headless warriors and 3 demonic dragons like breaking dead wood. In silence, the 3 headless warriors and the 3 demonic dragons dispersed straightaway. One should know that the 3 headless warriors and 3 demonic dragons possessed the fighting powers of an ordinary real god. They were merely hit by the shockwave caused by the collision of the 2 bolts of power, and they disappeared. It is that strong? Xianxia, who was swept by the shockwave, was then gawking with his eyes wide open. In the divine power storm that was formed by the 2 bolts of power. Wow! A sharp sword light forcefully tore all the obstacles before him. Jian Wushuang's figure directly pierced the divine power storm and appeared before Zidongwang. Zidongwang, take this. There was a chilly gleam in Jian Wushuang's eyes, and there was suddenly a black long spear that gave out unique aura in his hands. As his soul power flowed and covered the black long spear, it instantly turned into a bunch of black lights and suddenly shot out. The long spear didn't look very powerful, but in actual fact, the long spear contained the strongest soul attack that Jian Wushuang had performed with his all. The second stage of the secret skill of Tian Yuan. Inextinguishable light. The inextinguishable light with the support of divine spear was a divine power that was terrifying. Suddenly, the bunch of black light came before Zidongwang. Humph! Zidongwang harumphed coldly and slapped. The black long spear was immediately slapped away. However, the soul attack contained in the black long spear wasn't hindered but immersed itself into Zidongwang's body like lightning. A terrifying soul power suddenly descended. It's a consciousness attack. Zidongwang instantly alerted and immediately started a consciousness defense. However, the consciousness attack was like a sharp blade and forcefully tore his consciousness defense apart. In the end, it hit his consciousness without scruples. Ah! A shrill roar was heard from Zidongwang. Zidongwang couldn't stand the sharp pain in his consciousness, and he immediately knelt down. His face was flushed red and distorted in agony. The moment where Zidongwang drowned in acute pain, Jian Wushuang appeared before him, and his blood mountain sword showed no mercy but turned into a crimson streak of lightning and slammed down at Zidongwang's head. The acute pain in Zidongwang's consciousness had yet to subside, and he couldn't withstand the stroke, but the armor on his body covered his entire body. Clang! Blood mountain sword slashed at Zidongwang's head, and a fierce divine power exploded. Even though Zidongwang's head didn't break apart because of the protection of his armor, the fierce power spread into Zidongwang's body through the armor. Then, it hit the internal organs of his body insanely. Poof! Zidongwang spat a mouthful of fresh blood, and his face instantly grew pale. He was dispirited by half, and his body started falling down after the hit. However, Zidongwang's body had yet to fall on the ground, but it suddenly stopped. His bloodshot eyes stared at Jian Wushuang, and there was fear in his eyes. So scary. Such a terrifying consciousness attack. Compared to Xianxia's 9-weight destruction, it was much stronger. A consciousness attack like this, can't block it. I definitely can't block it. Run! Run! Zidongwang escaped straight away. Although he was seriously injured, he still had the strength to escape. In an instant, he had completely disappeared from Jian Wushuang's line of vision. When Xianxia witnessed such a scene, he was completely stunned at his position. How is this possible? Xianxia's eyes was filled with dullness. The proud and ambitious Zidongwang has actually run away? He found it unbelievable. However, at that moment Jian Wushuang looked at him. Xianxia felt fearful. Since Zidongwang had escaped, what was going to happen to him? Run! Xianxia did not hesitate, and he chose to escape at once. Humph! You have brought me inconvenience twice, and yet you wish to leave without paying the price for it? Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold. Although he was quite a distance away, he still used the same move. With the aid of the god-destroying lance, a light beam was shot, and it entered Xianxia from the back of his body. When Zidongwang had been struck by this soul attack previously, he had ended up in a very tragic state, and Jian Wushuang had taken advantage of the opportunity to wound him fatally. However, as Xianxia was proficient in soul attacks to begin with, his consciousness defense was stronger than Zidongwang. After taking Jian Wushuang's soul attack, Xianxia's body paused and his expression turned pale. However, he managed to withstand the attack, and he disappeared from in front of Jian Wushuang quickly. Jian Wushuang had a cold expression. Even though he looked on as Zidongwang and Xianxia left one after the other, he did not give chase. Instead, he looked toward a distant battlefield. On that battlefield, Duan Lingfeng was still fighting the god-destroying king. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang's body moved, and he appeared on the battlefield in a split second. When he arrived at the battlefield for real, he could not help but gasp in surprise as he looked at the battlefield. The big battlefield covered tens of thousands of miles. However, the ground below the battlefield had completely disappeared. What was left behind was a bottomless pit with a large circumference, as well as giant, boundless saber markings. Even the void was utterly dilapidated by the two frightening divine powers and looked as if it were the end of the world. Bam! A violent sound of collision could be heard from a part of the battlefield. Strong wind was also created from the power generated from the clash between the both of them, and it swept past the area. Jian Wushuang was hit by the strong wind, and this caused his hair and robe to be blown up. "This is really intense." Jian Wushuang stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. His eyes were glowing brilliantly. Swoosh! Swoosh! Two shadows finally separated from one another again, and the battlefield regained its peace for once. Jian Wushuang then looked toward the both of them, starting with Duan Lingfeng. The Duan Lingfeng of the very moment did not have his unyielding attitude, and he even looked a bit miserable. In addition, the corners of his mouth and his body had a few bloodstains. Even if this were the case, Duan Lingfeng's fighting spirit did not become any weaker. As for the god-destroying king, he remained powerful and unrivaled. Seems like Duan Lingfeng is the one in a slightly disadvantageous position. The first of the universe god ranking list really lives up to his reputation. Jian Wushuang gasped in admiration. In the void, the god-destroying king wore a nonchalant smile, and the intimidating golden long spear in his hands pointed toward Duan Lingfeng. "To be able to force me to this stage, you are indeed strong. However, if you wish to fight for my position, you are still not good enough." Duan Lingfeng's expression turned grave. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang appeared beside Duan Lingfeng. "Duan Lingfeng, this is the first time I have seen you in such a miserable state." Jian Wushuang chuckled. Duan Lingfeng glanced at Jian Wushuang and nodded his head. "Can't help it. This god-destroying king is really powerful. He is more powerful than any of the universe gods that I have met, as well as a few of the real gods. I have already done my best. However, I was still pushed back by him easily." Pushed back easily? Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted. The word easy could mean that the god-destroying king had not shown his true power yet. The god-destroying king, who was in a distant void, also noticed Jian Wushuang's arrival. "Jian Wushuang? What about Zidongwang and Xianxia?" The god-destroying king questioned with a deep voice. He had been fighting with Duan Lingfeng all the way, and he could not pay attention to the other battlefield. "The both of them ran away a long time ago," Jian Wushuang giggled. "Ran away?" God-destroying king's expression changed slightly. "Zidongwang is known as the second of the universe god ranking list. Even with Xianxia, they are still unable to do anything to you. To make matters worse, they even had to escape from you? What trash! Since the both of them have escaped, why aren't you leaving as well? Could it be that you want the both of us to send you off personally?" Jian Wushuang stared at the god-destroying king. "I, the god-destroying king, can come and go anytime I want. Since when is it up to other people to decide for me?" The god-destroying king bellowed coldly. "Seems like we really will have to send you off." Jian Wushuang chuckled and looked toward Duan Lingfeng, who was beside him. "Let's team up and fight the god-destroying king. Deal? 2 against 1? After muttering to himself for some time, Duan Lingfeng nodded his head. "No problem." Duan Lingfeng was also certain that it would be very difficult for him to fight against the god-destroying king alone. Hence, it would be impossible to force the god-destroying king to leave. Therefore, both of them had no choice but to team up. Comparing attack power, I am inferior to you. However, your martial art motion and speed are inferior to mine. Hence, I will fight with him in close combat, and you will take advantage of any openings to put pressure on him. With the both of us teaming up, we can teach this god-destroying king a lesson." Jian Wushuang laughed. "All right." Duan Lingfeng nodded his head earnestly. Immediately, whoosh! Jian Wushuang unleashed his martial art motion, and 18 shadows swept past the area. In no time, they appeared beside the god-destroying king and did not give him any time to use his sword principles. Buzz! An icy-cold golden light appeared abruptly. It was a golden long spear. The golden long spear was like a golden giant dragon, and it materialized in the void that Jian Wushuang's body had appeared from with lightning speed. A frightening destructive aura was also released at the same time. At that moment, Jian Wushuang only felt that he, as well as the void that he came out of, were about to be completely annihilated. What fast reactions! Jian Wushuang was surprised. With a change of his body again, he bypassed the intimidating golden long spear. After that, his body changed into a sharp sword, and the golden divine ape which shrouded his body also held the long sword in its hand tightly. Sword light then whistled. 10,000 shadows. Rustle. A great amount of sword light burst forth abruptly. However, the god-destroying king's eyes were filled with a layer of coldness. The golden long spear in his hands swept across the area in an intimidating manner which could destroy the world. The numerous sword principles that Jian Wushuang attacked with were all dissipated without exception, and even he himself was forced to retreat. The 15th. In the void, 15 crimson saber shadows appeared abruptly. They were superimposed onto one another and released. Humph! The god-destroying king bellowed coldly, and he simply extended his terrifying golden long spear forward. Boom! All of a sudden, the thousands of miles of void in front of him exploded and collapsed. As for the giant crimson saber light that was within the void, it dissipated instantly. Roar! The dispelled divine power filled the sky. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng's figures retreated from the hit. Jian Wushuang, don't act recklessly. God-destroying king's reflexes are very shocking. Although your martial art motion is creepy, it'd be too forceful to create an opportunity relying only on your martial art motion. Plus, he is highly skilled in using his spear. He's fast and accurate, and he was unbelievably strong. If one were to be careless and got shot, he might lose his life instantly. Duan Lingfeng said solemnly. I can tell. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. With only an instant of exchange, Jian Wushuang already knew why God-destroying king would be looked up to by countless universe gods. His strength wasn't merely on his absolute power of extermination. It also included his skill in using a spear and his terrifying insight and reflexes. God-destroying king's insight enabled him to lock Jian Wushuang's principal self among the 18 shadows in an instant, and his immediate reflexes allowed him to take action before Jian Wushuang. In other words, his martial art motion against God-destroying king was totally useless. The two of you? Come on and bring it up? God-destroying king's face was cold as he held the sword with one hand and looked at Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng arrogantly. He had an overbearing manner. This is crazy. Jian Wushuang's face was cold. I'd like to see if you really have no weakness. Birum. There was a crimson light that suddenly burst out of Jian Wushuang's eyes like a crimson sun. 18 Azura hell descended. Dreamland. God-destroying king's eyes contracted and his body shivered as he roared. Break! 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 He uttered the word thrice. God-destroying king had already shaken off the phantasmagoria. But Jian Wushuang revealed a smile at the sight. God-destroying king's consciousness strength is quite shocking. At least he is much stronger than Zidongwang, but he is at most about Xianxia's standards. If I were to perform the secret skill of Tian Yuan with my all, I could definitely affect him. Jian Wushuang quickly made up his mind. Let me try. Jian Wushuang's figure moves and boundless divine power suddenly flowed towards his right index finger. Ancient God fourth finger. God's test. Jian Wushuang performed his strongest move again. When he performed the same move earlier to fight against Zidongwang's strongest unique skill, it was evenly matched. Rumble. The dark gold hand appeared again. A dark gold finger that looked like it had extended from ancient times was pointing towards God-destroying king. The power was earth-shattering. Humph! How can the light of a spark compete with the sun and the moon? God-destroying king looked at him in disdain. Then, the long spear in his hand suddenly let out a dragon roar. He waved and a total of 9 golden dragon that contained extermination auras plunged out. The 9 golden dragon almost instantly shattered the gold finger. However, right at the moment when the gold finger collapsed completely, a ray of light burst out through the void. The light was transformed from the God-killing spear. In God-killing spear, it contained the secret of Tian Yuan which Jian Wushuang performed with his all. Dang! God-destroying king waved God-killing spear casually and it flew aside. However, the soul attack hidden in the God-killing spear heavily hit his consciousness. Ha! God-destroying King's facial expression suddenly changed. As expected, Jian Wushuang's eyes were twinkling with joy. He could clearly feel that God-destroying King's aura had diminished sharply at that moment. Darkness region. Boundless darkness suddenly enveloped him while Duan Lingfeng was the king of the darkness. His eyes had a chilly gleam. As his figure turned illusionary, he pierced through the void and appeared next to God-destroying King. On the crimson saber in his hand, there was a flow of crimson light. Massacre shadow. Wow! The sword light glistened. It was different from any other techniques that Duan Lingfeng had performed. Not only was that stroke fast, but most importantly, the sharpness contained in the stroke as though it could cut through the entire heaven and earth. There was a layer of crimson shadow in the void that was cut open. God-destroying King's eyes contracted. A terrifying aura condensed and he wanted to wield his spear. Another dark light hit again and the soul attack within the dark light hit God-destroying King's consciousness. It caused a pause in God-destroying King's action and he couldn't wield his spear in time. He could barely hold his spear before his body. Dang! The crimson shadow descended and a fierce power spread. God-destroying King's body slouched and fell lower by a dozen zhang. However, before he steadied himself, there were two figures that appeared on each of his sides. Crimson Knight Arc Light. Duan Lingfeng was like a statue of crimson rock. He wielded the saber in his hands and swung. 10,000 shadows. Jian Wushuang gave full play to his sword principle. Among this sword principle it contained a strong soul attack. The two of them, one on the left and one on the right, charged towards God-destroying King who was still falling. They continued to press him. The golden bellicose spear in God-destroying King's hand was moving crazily. It swept, it stabbed, it slashed, and ferocious power swept across and fought against Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng vigorously. Dang! 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 Metal clashing sounds were heard continuously as the universe roared. In the insane massacre, the three of their powers exploded almost perfectly. Although God-destroying King was powerful, he seemed to be at a disadvantage as he endured the attack from both of them simultaneously at such a close distance. In a few breaths, he was hit multiple times by both Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng's remaining sword light. God-destroying King's gaze was cold, but there was anger raging in his heart. Go away! Hong! A terrifying extermination aura erupted, just like a war beast that could ruin heaven and earth. The power struck fear in both Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. They had no choice and they could only retreat. But as they retreated, go! Jian Wushuang controlled his willpower and shot out God-killing spear at lightning speed again. God-destroying King blocked the attack of the divine spear easily, but he couldn't do anything about the soul attack contained in God-killing spear. Since the beginning of the fight, it was the fourth time he had been hit by Jian Wushuang's secret skill of Tianyuan. Even though his consciousness was extremely strong, he couldn't stand it but let out a groan. His face grew pale and his aura grew spiritless. Humph! I thought you'll be able to endure it forever. Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold, but he scoffed. God-destroying King is ridiculously strong, regardless of attack, defense, speed, as well as his skill of using a spear, his insight and reflexes, they could be described as terrifying. However, in terms of consciousness, although his consciousness is extremely strong, even if Xianxia were to give his all, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. However, my consciousness attack is much stronger than Xianxia's. Using his consciousness as a breaching point, we can fight against him with the two of us joining forces. Duan Lingfeng, let's go! Boom! Boom! Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng attacked again. Two experts standing at the top of countless universe gods had teamed up to fight the God-destroying King. Duan Lingfeng had already displayed his comprehension of the Massacre Doctrine and Darkness Doctrine completely. His comprehension of the Massacre Doctrine and Darkness Doctrine already had the ability to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. The saber skills that he had created were so powerful that it was absurd. Combined with many secret skills, his fighting capabilities at that very moment were enough to make a normal real god despair. As for Jian Wushuang, his attack power, defense, and speed were at the top of the universe god ranking list. Moreover, his martial art motion was extremely strange. The most important thing was his soul attacks. His soul attacks were a great threat to the god-destroying king. After all, it was impossible to avoid soul attacks, and one could only defend or block with all their might. The soul attacks that were unleashed time after time had caused the god-destroying king to be under even more pressure. Take the secret skill of Tian Yuan that Jian Wushuang used with his full power as an example. With every attack, the god-destroying king's consciousness would be wounded. After taking the attack 4 times, his consciousness was already seriously injured. From then on, the 5th attack, the 6th attack. It was only when the god-destroying king took the 7th attack of the secret skill of Tian Yuan that his expression turned ghastly pale. Haha, he won't last for much longer. Duan Lingfeng, let's put in a bit more effort. Today, the both of us shall defeat the god-destroying king. Jian Wushuang laughed loudly. No problem. Duan Lingfeng was filled with murderous intent. However, at that moment, the god-destroying king's body changed and he retreated to a distant void. As he stood at the void, the god-destroying king stared at Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng with an ashen expression. Jian Wushuang, white-robed swordsman, today, I admit that I have lost. The days are still long. If there is another opportunity after today, I will fight the two of you again. With a roar, the god-destroying king turned his body and left immediately. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng stood beside one another, and they looked on as the figure of the god-destroying king flew further away. Finally, the god-destroying king disappeared from their field of vision completely. At that moment, both Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng heaved a sigh of relief. The god-destroying king has finally left. As Jian Wushuang spoke, his whole body almost collapsed. He was scared off by you? Duan Lingfeng glanced at Jian Wushuang. Haha. Jian Wushuang could not help but laugh, and he said, if I didn't scare him, he might push on and continue fighting with us. At that time, both of us would be the ones escaping tragically. Jian Wushuang was very certain that, in the match moments ago, his cooperation with Duan Lingfeng had indeed managed to push back the god-destroying king. However, they did not overpower him easily. After all, the secret skill of Tian Yuan was a secret skill of the soul attacks. Hence, it would deplete a huge amount of soul power. Although Jian Wushuang's force of soul had risen greatly, he had used up quite a bit of his soul power during his match with Zidongwang and Xianxia. After that, he had continued fighting against the god-destroying king, and he unleashed the secret skill of Tian Yuan 7 times consecutively. As a result, his soul power had been completely exhausted. He had absolutely no way of using the secret skill of Tian Yuan an 8th time. Without the secret skill of Tian Yuan, they would be unable to push back the god-destroying king. Moreover, not only were Jian Wushuang's soul power depleted, even Duan Lingfeng's divine power would be completely used up as well. In other words, both of them were unable to continue the fight. As such, Jian Wushuang intentionally said that he would work together with Duan Lingfeng to destroy the god-destroying king at that moment. He was merely putting up a strong front to scare the god-destroying king. The god-destroying king must have depleted a huge amount of energy as well. Moreover, his consciousness should be on the edge of falling apart. Hence, he has no choice. Even if you didn't scare him, he would probably not want to continue fighting against us, Duan Lingfeng said. Perhaps so, Jian Wushuang said. No matter what, the god-destroying king is really frightening. Indeed. Duan Lingfeng also nodded his head seriously. Although he had teamed up with Jian Wushuang, they were only barely able to push back the god-destroying king. Moreover, if the god-destroying king had decided to push on and continue fighting against them, would the end result still be the same? What kind of power was that? As expected of the strongest expert recognized by the Universe God ranking list. Even the proud and ambitious Zidongwang could not be compared to any super monsters that were proficient in mental strength. But the abilities of the god-destroying king. As Jian Wushuang muttered to himself, he had a thought in his mind. Perhaps after I clear the inverse cultivation test for the 3rd heaven and become a universe god of the 3rd heaven for real, I'll be able to defeat him. at the moment where Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng were gasping in surprise with regards to the god-destroying king's shocking fighting capabilities. At a void far away from the battlefield, numerous universe gods had gathered. Many of them had arrived a long time ago to witness the astonishing battle from afar. When the pinnacle match concluded for real, everyone was stunned. The team consisting of the god-destroying king, Zi Dongwang, Xianxia actually lost? Even though Zi Dongwang and Xianxia teamed up, they were still defeated by Jian Wushuang alone? And Zi Dongwang was seriously injured. Jian Wushuang and the white-robed swordsman teamed up and managed to push back the god-destroying king? The invincible god-destroying king actually lost? Gosh! Inside the vast hall outside the cave, many almighties, as well as the real gods of many big powerhouses, had gathered. In the middle of the big hall there was a giant video screen. The video was recorded meticulously by someone who had seen the pinnacle match. It was then sent over after the match had concluded. What appeared in the video first was the scene where Jian Wushuang was fighting Zi Dongwang and Xianxia. Gosh! Jian Wushuang actually dared to have a close combat fight with Zi Dongwang? Moreover, both of them are actually evenly matched. His close combat abilities are actually not weaker than Zi Dongwang's? In the video, after Jian Wushuang and Zi Dongwang clashed with their strongest move, Jian Wushuang used his soul attacks at once. This caused Zi Dongwang to give shrill roars. After that, Jian Wushuang wounded Zi Dongwang with a stroke and caused him to escape madly. This is a consciousness attack? Even Zi Dongwang was unable to block Jian Wushuang's consciousness attack? Doesn't that mean that his consciousness attacks are stronger than Xianxia's? His consciousness attacks are stronger than Xianxia's. His martial art motion is more frightening than universe god Liu Ying's, and his close combat abilities are not weaker than Zi Dongwang's. In addition, there are also his defensive abilities. I also feel that he is not inferior to the Ice Feather Demon King, who is ranked 8th in the universe god ranking list. As such, he can be said to have no weak points at all. The only thing that he is lacking in is probably his unique skills. How strange. Even though Jian Wushuang is so powerful, why are his unique skills so weak? In actual fact, it was already very impressive for a universe god like Jian Wushuang to create so many real god unique skills. However, compared to the experts in the top 10 of the universe god ranking list who stood at the peak of the pyramid in the eternal chaotic world, it was indeed very inferior. The intense fight in the video continued. After Zi Dongwang and Xianxia escaped from Jian Wushuang, it proceeded to show Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng teaming up to fight against the god-destroying king. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng teamed up and fought against god-destroying king. Even the top experts in the hall were holding their breath as they watched the battle, as they were afraid that they might miss a detail. After the battle had ended, everyone in the hall gasped in surprise. God-destroying king lost? Haha! Jian Wushuang and the white-robed swordsman are very impressive. We made a mistake previously. We thought the white-robed swordsman's darkness doctrine had reached the standard to pass the first level of Doctrine Palace. But in actual fact, both his darkness doctrine and massacre doctrine could pass the first level of Doctrine Palace. The flawless combination of both isn't any weaker than God-destroying king in terms of comprehension towards Heaven Way. If it wasn't because God-destroying king was that person's disciple and acquired skills from the tutelage from him, he might not be the white-robed swordsman's match. That Jian Wushuang, his consciousness attack and martial art motion is number 1 among all universe gods, while his defense power and close combat ability could be in the top 3 among all universe gods. With this combination, the threat against God-destroying king is even greater. The two of them teamed up. God-destroying king lost miserably. The Almighties discussed among themselves. As for the real gods from various forces, they looked at Lei Chao enviously. Lei Chao, the little guy from Lineage of Star, is very impressive. Zi Dongwang and Xianxia lost to him even though they teamed up. He even fought against and could be considered to have defeated God-destroying king with the white-robed swordsman. Such capability, TSK. From the looks of it, Lineage of Star is going to give birth to another great expert again. Over the years, he might even stand a chance to step foot in the ranks of Almighty. He has great potential. Hearing the surrounding comments, even Lei Chao, who was of a cold disposition, revealed a smile. He replied to the surrounding real gods as he immediately sent the latest news to Hall Master Yuan and the higher-ups in Lineage of Star. In Wu Bei's cave where God-destroying king had fought earlier, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng sat down to recover. They knew that there were countless universe gods looking at them, but they couldn't be bothered, nor did they mind. Even the formation of God-destroying king, Zi Dongwang and Xianxia couldn't do anything to defeat them. There was definitely no one else in Wu Bei's cave that could pose a threat against both of them. Just then, a scrawny man plunged into the void from afar and came before Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. Vientiane Tower Blackshirt greets both of you. The scrawny man was very polite. He bowed at Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng from 100 miles distance. People from Vientiane Tower? How can I help you? Jian Wushuang lifted his head and glanced at the scrawny man. I came here on the command of the higher-ups of Vientiane Tower. We'd like to inquire this Mister's real name. The scrawny man stole a glance at Duan Lingfeng carefully. Oh! Jian Wushuang was surprised. To ask for his name? Is it for Universe God ranking list? Yes. The scrawny man smiled. Misters should know that Universe God ranking list is announced after Vientiane Tower concluded. Previously, Mr. White-Robed Swordsman defeated Demon Girl Ling Luo. Vientiane Tower naturally listed him in the 3rd place on Universe God ranking list. However, Vientiane Tower never knew his real name. Hence, we could only replace it with White-Robed Swordsman. But we can't just keep it that way. So, they sent me to inquire. I understand. Jian Wushuang understood. He looked at Duan Lingfeng and he saw that Duan Lingfeng remained aloof. He immediately smiled and replied, Return and inform the higher-ups in Vientiane Tower that he is called Duan Lingfeng. The scrawny man beamed with joy. Thank you. Then, the scrawny sent a message to the higher-ups in Vientiane Tower. In the blink of an eye, a few days passed. Outside the cave in the lofty hall. Everyone, Master Tower Chifu on the higher place in the hall. The entire hall immediately went quiet. Vientiane Tower sorted out the latest Universe God ranking list. Everyone take a look first. Tower Master Chifu waved and the brand new Universe God ranking list suddenly appeared before everyone again. Actually, Vientiane Tower sorted and released a Universe God ranking list every once in a while. However, the fight in Wu Bei's cave and the massacre was too insane, which led to huge changes in the ranking on Universe God ranking list. Hence, whenever there was time, Vientiane Tower would tidy up the ranking list again and release it. On the huge floating ranking list in the hall, the ranking appeared before the experts. In the 1st place on Universe God ranking list was still God-destroying king. There was no doubt. After all, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng had teamed up and suppressed God-destroying king. When fighting 1-to-1, neither one of them could be God-destroying king's match. The 2nd place on Universe God ranking list, Duan Lingfeng, White-Robed Swordsman. The 3rd place on Universe God ranking list, Jian Wushuang. The 4th place on Universe God ranking list, Zi Dongwang. The 5th place on Universe God ranking list, Demon Girl Ling Luo. The 6th place on Universe God ranking list, Xianxia. The 7th place on Universe God ranking list, Tian Tian. The 8th place on Universe God ranking list, Universe God Lu Ying. The 9th place on Universe God ranking list, 7 Universe King. The 10th place on Universe God ranking list, Demon King Ice Feather. The 11th place on Universe God ranking list, Universe God Emosho. Compared to before, the brand new Universe God ranking list had drastic changes again, especially in the top 10 on Universe God ranking list. Zi Dongwang, who was originally in the 2nd place, fell to the 4th directly, while Duan Lingfeng and Jian Wushuang took over the 2nd and the 3rd place. As for Tian Tian, he was an expert who had suddenly risen during the days when the 2nd level of cave opened. He had fought with Universe God Lu Ying once and had the upper hand. He naturally was listed before Universe God Lu Ying. Demon King Ice Feather and 7 Universe King had fought head-on once. In the end, 7 Universe King had the upper hand by a slight bit. hence the exchange of their rankings. Besides that, there wasn't much difference. The experts in the hall generally agreed with the brand new Universe God ranking list. If there were to be any discussion, it was about Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng's ranking. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng's power should be about the same. If we have to differentiate their strengths, I feel that Jian Wushuang is slightly stronger. After all, even God-destroying king can't endure his soul attack. Duan Lingfeng might not be able to endure it either. On top of that, his martial art motion is so creepy. He has almost no weakness. If he were to fight a life and death battle against Duan Lingfeng, he would definitely be the one to have the last laugh. I think so too, but it's hard to say. If they were to not really have a fight, it'd be difficult to differentiate their power. Haha, they are best friends and they don't worry much about Universe God ranking list. Do you think you'll be able to call for a match? There were almighties and real gods sparring casually. However, the argument went nowhere. In the end, the brand new Universe God ranking list released. Atop an isolated mountain in Wu Bei's cave, the god-destroying king, a fragile-looking young man, was sitting down with his legs crossed. With a few days' time, his divine power had more or less recovered. However, the damage that his consciousness had sustained would still require a period of time to recover. At the very moment, he was staring at the new Universe God ranking list. Duan Lingfeng is second and Jian Wushuang is third? These two brats. The god-destroying king's eyes were glowing with a fierce, terrifying light. Ever since he was first in the Universe God ranking list, no Universe Gods had made him so miserable before. Not long ago, Zi Dongwang had also teamed up with 3 other Universe Gods who were in the top 20 of the Universe God ranking list to fight him. However, he had killed the 3 Universe Gods in that match and only Zi Dongwang managed to get away luckily. From that moment on, Zi Dongwang had stopped thinking of challenging him. However, at that very moment, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng's appearance had caused him to feel pressured. I hope that I can still meet the both of you on the 3rd level of cave. The god-destroying king smiled. After that, he closed his eyes. Within a thick forest, Zi Dongwang was hiding. He had no choice. Since he was proud and ambitious, he had offended quite a number of people. For example, close to half of the top 20 in the Universe God ranking list could not stand him. Previously, he was at his peak and he was not frightened at all. However, after fighting with and being seriously injured by Jian Wushuang, his power declined drastically and it still had not recovered completely. As such, he had to be careful. Zi Dongwang had also obtained the newest Universe God ranking list. Duan Lingfeng is 2nd and Jian Wushuang is 3rd. I am actually 4th now. Damn it! Zi Dongwang bellowed. Even though he had already guessed that this would happen after his match with Jian Wushuang, he still could not help but be furious and he even harbored hatred. He resented Duan Lingfeng. However, he resented Jian Wushuang even more. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng, both of you had better be prepared. I, Zi Dongwang, will definitely not accept a position behind the both of you. There would definitely come a day where I seize my position on the Universe God ranking list back. Zi Dongwang clenched both his fists and in no time, he continued to recuperate from his injuries. Back then, when Zi Dongwang and Jian Wushuang had clashed and he was defeated by Jian Wushuang, he was the first to escape. Later on, Xianxia had also escaped. However, the both of them separated from one another. At that very moment, Xianxia was also in a certain place in Wu Bei's cave and he was looking at the newest Universe God ranking list. With regard to the newest Universe God ranking list, Xianxia could accept it. Previously, when the Vientiane Tower placed Jian Wushuang 5th in the Universe God ranking list, I was a bit dissatisfied. However, looks like I was just being arrogant. With his abilities, he has the right to take the 3rd position. As for the 5 people in front of me, they are indeed stronger than me. Xianxia no longer had any dissatisfaction. He was different from Zi Dongwang. Zi Dongwang was totally dissatisfied being below others. However, Xianxia did not have such thoughts. As long as the other party's abilities were sufficient, he would accept them. Previously, he had questioned Jian Wushuang's abilities. Hence, he attacked Jian Wushuang. However, he no longer had thoughts of fighting against Jian Wushuang. It was clear that Jian Wushuang was not someone he could compete with. Although the newest universe god ranking list caused quite a bit of uproar when it was disseminated in Wu Bei's cave, many universe gods were able to accept the rankings on it. Especially the three people who were the top three: the god-destroying king, Duan Lingfeng, and Jian Wushuang. The abilities of these three experts were proven with their own fighting capabilities, and there was no need to doubt them. However, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng themselves did not care about the rankings at all. The both of them were the same. They were not concerned with their reputation. They were only concerned with possessing absolute abilities. Therefore, although the Almighty's many real gods as well as many universe gods were having a heated discussion as to who belonged in the second and third positions, they were too lazy to care about such a point. No matter who was second or third, they were not too concerned. Time passed slowly. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng had gradually recovered to their peak. Finally, 1 month's time was up. Buzz, buzz. Space passages appeared in each and every corner of the second level of the cave. Those space passages led to the third level of Wu Bei's cave. Let's go. Let's go to the third level. The most valuable treasure in Wu Bei's cave as well as opportunities are in the third level. Let's hurry over quickly. Many universe gods who had completed their preparations a long time ago moved their bodies and headed into the space passage immediately. With that, they entered the space of the cave's third level. Naturally, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng did not hesitate, and they entered the third level space too. The third level was a spacious, open land. The open land was not very big, and it was hundreds of miles wide at best. However, rays of lights glowed, and a huge number of universe gods appeared in the open land at the same time. From the time Wu Bei's cave had opened to the present, more than 100,000 universe gods had entered Wu Bei's cave. Even though quite a number of universe gods had fallen after the crazy massacre on the first and second level, there were still a little more than 100,000 universe gods remaining. At that moment, the 100,000 universe gods had gathered on the open land at the same time. This is... What's going on? He actually gathered all of us here. How exactly do we compete for the white blaze fruit tree? Many universe gods revealed a puzzled expression. Within the crowd, there were naturally some people who were more conspicuous. For example, God-destroying king. He was standing in the center of the open land quietly. At the start, there were a large number of universe gods surrounding him. However, as soon as he made a move, all the universe gods surrounding him, including an expert in the universe god ranking list, were all frightened away. Moreover, there was Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng, who stood together. It's Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. It's the both of them? Get away quickly. Get away quickly. The universe gods around them also retreated to somewhere far away. Duan Lingfeng and I are not big demons who would start a massacre. Why are they so scared? After seeing what had happened, Jian Wushuang shook his head and laughed. They are not afraid. They are being respectful. The king of venomous worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang understood. When he looked around, he also saw the god-destroying king who was a distance away, Zidongwang, Xianxia, and many other similar people. All these experts who stood at the top of the universe god ranking list had experienced something similar, where no one stood beside them. That was the weak being respectful to the strong. At that moment, at the void at the highest point of the open land, there was buzzing and the dim shadow appeared again. Haha! Little kids! Welcome to the last level of my cave. This level is different from the previous 2 levels. There will not be any killings. No one is to fight in the third level. If not only will he not able to get the treasure at the end, he will also die, no matter who he is. Real God Wu Bei's voice reverberated in the third level in the cave, and the 100,000 universe gods in the open ground were shocked. Among them, some heaved a sigh of relief. These were those who had gotten white blaze fruits in the first and second level of the cave. Then, with all universe gods gathered together, they would be besieged by a large crowd of universe god if massacres were to be permitted. Luckily, massacres were prohibited in the third level. In the void, real God Wu Bei's voice continued. On the third level of the cave, there's no fights nor massacres, only 3 tests. The one with the most outstanding performance among the 3 tests would receive a chance, and the chance naturally means a white blaze fruit tree. The universe gods on the open ground were in tumult. Test. 3 tests. I wonder what the context of the test will be. As the universe gods were talking among themselves, Universe God Lu Ying lowered his voice and asked, Real God Wu Bei, do you mean the final chance will be decided according to our overall performance in the 3 tests? No. Real God Wu Bei shook his head. You misunderstood me. I mean, there will be 3 tests, and the one who performs the best in every test will receive 1 chance. In other words, 3 tests and 3 chances. Naturally, there are 3 white blaze fruit trees. What? The universe gods on the open ground were stunned. 3 white blaze fruit trees? Jian Wushuang's eyes opened in surprise. In the lofty hall outside the cave. Impossible. Fake. Real God Wu Bei is lying. 3 white blaze fruit trees? Is he joking? The experts in the hall, including the 20 Almighties, stood up in surprise. 3 white blaze fruit trees? One must know, from the ancient times till then, there had only been 2 white blaze fruit trees in eternal chaotic world. The first tree was from the ancient times, which had been destroyed long ago. The second tree was the one that fell into real God Wu Bei's hands during the crazy fight. Back then, for the sapling of the white blaze fruit tree, many Almighties had participated in the fight. There were even Almighties that had died from the fight. But then, real God Wu Bei said that he had 3 white blaze fruit trees? Hurry up and ask if he really has 3 white blaze fruit trees. If yes, ask how he got the other 2 trees. The red-haired elderly immediately sent in a message. On the open ground of the 3rd level of the cave. Real God Wu Bei, you really have 3 white blaze fruit trees? Universe God Lu Ying asked suspiciously. Of course, otherwise, with only 1 white blaze fruit tree, how could I nurture so many white blaze fruits in such a short period of time? You must know that the total of white blaze fruits that appeared in the 1st and 2nd level of the cave was about 80 pieces. Real God Wu Bei smiled faintly. As for the other 2 white blaze fruit trees' origin, I can't explain much. I can only tell you that there was an expert that helped to cultivate it. An expert that helped to cultivate it? Everyone on the open ground gasped. In the lofty hall. Back when real Wu Bei got the white blaze fruit tree, it was just a sapling, and it was not too long ago. During this time, even if the sapling grew mature, it would be impossible for 1 tree to have so many white blaze fruits. Hence, he must be telling the truth, the red-haired elderly said. It is believable. It seems that there was really an expert that had helped him to cultivate 2 white blaze fruit trees. Who could the expert be? Could it be one of the few? No way. Even though the few are powerful, they might not be capable of cultivating a new white blaze fruit tree. Regardless of who the expert was, there's a great chance laid before us. Previously, I thought there was only 1 white blaze fruit tree and the possibility of us getting it was rather low. But now, there's a total of 3 trees and the possibility of us getting 1 is much greater. We shall see these guys' performance. Although the Almighties were thirsty for white blaze fruit trees, they could only place their hopes in the universe gods in the cave. They could only rely on the universe gods to fight for the white blaze fruit tree for them. In the cave. I know everything that happens in the cave will definitely be watched closely by many Almighties. If so, let me tell the Almighties the chance is laid before you. As for if you can get it or not, it depends if the guys that you sent in respectively are striving for it or not. Real God Wu Bei said with a smile. All right, I said what I have to. Then 3 tests. Let's begin with the first one straight away. As he spoke, real God Wu Bei's blurry shadow waved his hand. Virum, a boundless power concentrated in the void above the open ground. Then there was a huge chessboard that appeared. On the chessboard, there were only black chess pieces but no white chess pieces. There was a total of 1,000 black chess pieces. Looking at the huge chessboard, the universe gods on the open ground were shocked. What is this? Chess. This test, would it be for us to play chess? No, it's not that simple. Every chess piece on the board gives me a very different feeling. It caused a great commotion at the open ground. Jian Wushuang, who was in the middle of the open ground, saw the huge chess set that had appeared in the void above, and he stared. This is the Scattered Stars game? Yes, it's the Scattered Stars game. Jian Wushuang's eyes shined. He was not unfamiliar with the Scattered Stars game. Back when he had first stepped foot in Eternal Chaotic World and wandered in Daiyu World, the master of Daiyu Palace, who was a universe god in the third heaven on the peak of Daiyu World, had taken out the Scattered Stars game. However, the master of Daiyu Palace only had the little Scattered Stars game, and there were only 100 chess pieces. Hence, there were only 100 moves. Even so, Jian Wushuang had received great benefits from resolving the little Scattered Stars game back then, especially regarding his understanding towards swordsmanship, which had advanced by leaps and bounds. Jian Wushuang had already found out from King of Venomous Worms that the Scattered Stars game was of an unusual origin. It was created by an almighty. Not only was there a little Scattered Stars game, but there was also a great Scattered Stars game. There were 10,000 chess pieces in a complete little Scattered Stars game, with a total of 10,000 moves. The huge chessboard that appeared in the void above the open ground wasn't a complete great Scattered Stars game. After all, there were only 1,000 chess pieces. However, to many universe gods, the Scattered Stars game with 1,000 chess pieces were already unfathomable. The first test is to resolve the Scattered Stars game? Jian Wushuang's pupils shrunk. The dim shadow of real god Wu Bei stood high in the sky, and he was paying attention to the expressions of everyone. The first test is to solve this Scattered Stars game. The Scattered Stars game was created by an extremely old almighty. In the Eternal Chaotic World, it is extremely popular. Among all of you here, some of you must have either seen, heard of, or even tried to solve it before. The rules of this Scattered Stars game are simple. There are 1,000 black chess pieces on the chessboard, and this is equivalent to 1,000 moves. Every move is a test. I will give all of you 100 years' time. After 100 years, the person who is able to resolve the greatest number of moves will be able to obtain the White Blaze fruit tree of this first test. After real god Wu Bei had finished his speech, a small chessboard appeared in front of the universe gods in the open land. Everyone had 1,000 black chess pieces. For every move that was solved by the universe god in front of the small chessboard, one black chess piece would disappear. Let's begin. Real god Wu Bei waved his hand and said. The universe gods on the open land sat down in front of their chessboards with their legs crossed. After that, they entered a state of comprehension. Duan Lingfeng, have you ever come across this Scattered Stars game? Jian Wushuang did not rush to solve the Scattered Stars game. Instead, he looked toward Duan Lingfeng, who was beside him. I have heard of it before. However, I have never come across it, Duan Lingfeng said. Since that's the case, I shall give you some tips. In order to solve the Scattered Stars game, we cannot do it quickly. We need to do it step by step and also entrench ourselves in every step, Jian Wushuang said. Since he had resolved the Scattered Stars game before, he had some experience and also knew of some tactics. Understood. Duan Lingfeng nodded his head. In no time, the both of them had sat down in front of their own chessboards and begun to solve the chess set. The Scattered Stars game. Jian Wushuang grinned, and his consciousness entered the first chess piece. Whoosh! The scenery changed, and Jian Wushuang appeared in a pale piece of land. The ground was filled with snow, and in the front portion of the land quietly stood a white-robed figure. When it saw Jian Wushuang appearing, it unsheathed its long sword, and an extremely sharp sword headed toward Jian Wushuang's throat. Jian Wushuang was already prepared. With a release of his sword light, the sharp sword was destroyed. In an instant, the first move was resolved. As expected, the first move is the same as the first move that I solved for the little Scattered Stars game back then. If I'm not wrong, the first 100 moves of this chess set should also be the same, Jian Wushuang giggled. Back then at Daiyu Universe, I had just cleared the inverse cultivation test and become a universe god of the first heaven. At that time, I managed to resolve all 100 moves of the Scattered Stars game. Now, I am a universe god of the second heaven, and my abilities are at the top among the universe gods. I wonder how many moves I can resolve in 100 years' time. Time to begin. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and started to solve the chess set with all his might. Since he had solved the first 100 moves of the chess set before, there was no need for him to waste any time. Thus, in no time he began to solve the 101st move. For the 101st move, Jian Wushuang could solve it easily. Moreover, he was not anxious. He had to do it orderly and steadily so that he could accumulate the understanding of the sword principles continuously. In the vast hall outside the cave. It's the Scattered Stars game? The first test that real god Wu Bei prepared is actually to solve the Scattered Stars game? Humph. He wants to test out the comprehension level of those little kids. Many experts in the big hall were having a discussion with one another. The Scattered Stars game had always been a test of the level of comprehension. In the Scattered Stars game, one would be unable to sense the existence of any doctrines. Be it doctrines that one had unlocked or the power of heaven way that one had comprehended, none of them could be detected. Moreover, unique skills and secret skills could not be used. Hence, no matter how high one's unique skill level was, when solving the Scattered Stars game, he would not have the upper hand. If one wished to solve the Scattered Stars game, he could only rely on his own weapons and understanding. Take Jian Wushuang as an example. As he was proficient in sword principles, what would be directed at him would be his understanding of sword principles. Duan Lingfeng was proficient in saber principles. Hence, what would be directed at him would be his understanding of saber principles. For such an understanding, one would need to analyze and try to figure it out continuously while solving the moves. Naturally, the level of comprehension was the most important. The Scattered Stars game is extremely advanced. Under normal circumstances, a universe god of the third heaven solving 500 moves within 100 years' time could be considered a top genius. However, now Wu Bei's cave has practically gathered all the top geniuses in the eternal chaotic world. As such, there should be quite a number of kids who can resolve 500 moves. Haha! With so many geniuses gathered together, resolving 500 moves alone might no longer be considered the top. Let's watch. There will definitely be someone among them who can solve 600 moves. A universe god solving 600 moves of the Scattered Stars game within 100 years' time. Only then is that considered impressive. However, we won't know how many such monsters there will be. Let's wait and see. Many experts in the big hall were waiting in anticipation. At that moment, over 100,000 universe gods in the open space of the third level of the cave were displaying their own abilities with all their might to solve the Scattered Stars game. The Scattered Stars game would get more difficult as more moves were solved, with the most difficult moves at the end. As everyone present was at the peak of the universe god of the third heaven, the first 300 moves were easy to them. In just 10 days' time, most of the 100,000 universe gods in the open space had solved over 300 moves. After 1 year, more than half of the 100,000 universe gods in the open had solved 400 moves. At the 400th move, the difficulty level increased greatly and everyone started to slow down. For example, Jian Wushuang, Duan Lingfeng and Xianxia, and even the god-destroying king's solving speed was very slow. Under normal circumstances, they would require a few days to solve a move. Compared to them, among the universe gods, there was one person who was very dazzling. This person was Zidongwang. From the start, his solving speed was shocking. He had only taken 7 days to solve the first 300 moves. As for solving the 400th move, he only used half a year's time. It should be known that apart from him, the 7 Universe King, who was the second fastest to solve the 400th move, had used 8 months' time. As for other people, they used 9 or 10 months or even a year. For example, it had taken Jian Wushuang a total of 1 year and 4 months' time. Now 10 years had passed. Zidongwang had already solved the 490th move, and he was not too far away from the doorstep of the 500th move. As for the 7 Universe King, who was the closest to him, he had only solved the 482nd move. Moreover, it was obvious that his speed had also decreased and he was unable to compete with Zidongwang. As for the people behind the 7 Universe Kings, such as Jian Wushuang, Duan Lingfeng, the God-Destroying King, and Ling Luo, they were fluctuating between the 430th and 440th move. Compared to Zidongwang, their speeds were obviously a lot slower. On the third level of the cave, Zidongwang's speed of resolving the Scattered Stars game was extremely fast. The 500th move, there was a sharp light glistening in Zidongwang's eyes. On the chessboard before him, half of the 1,000 black chess pieces had disappeared. Then, Zidongwang glanced at everyone around him, especially those on Universe God ranking list. He realized that God-destroying king, who was on the first place on Universe God ranking list, was only resolving 450th move. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng were resolving the 441st move and the 447th move. The few others were roughly on similar moves. Haha! They have yet to even solve the 450th move. Too slow, too slow. God-destroying king, Duan Lingfeng and Jian Wushuang, aren't the three of you at a higher ranking than I am? The three of you are just so faster and faster with every step. I already solved the 500th move. According to the speed in the 100 time frame, I shall solve 600 moves or even 700 moves. These people will fall far behind me. The white blaze fruit tree for the first test is mine. No one can fight against me. Zidongwang was smug with success and he felt every inch a hero. Very soon, he continued to solve. He didn't know that in the crowd around him, some of the top geniuses behind him were looking at him in ridicule. In the lofty hall in the outside world, Zidongwang has already solved the 500th move. It has only been 12 years. He is really quite fast. Among the almighties, the unicorn red-haired elderly sneered. The other almighties around him were ridiculing Zidongwang too. This Zidongwang, I thought highly of him previously. Even though he lost to Duan Lingfeng and Jian Wushuang, he was still considered an impressive genius. But from what it seems now, he is just an idiot. He thought to solve the scattered stars game with only speed. A coldly elegant woman spoke. The coldly elegant woman was also an almighty. Humph, his speed is really fast, far beyond the others. However, he didn't accumulate any experience. This is just like a cultivator who took an elixir to forcefully increase his power and realm. Although the speed at the beginning is really fast, his potential was cut off entirely. I am certain that Zidongwang definitely can't solve the 550th level. Hearing the coldly elegant woman's remark, the almighties exchanged a look and laughed. Obviously, they agreed with what the former had said. Actually, he can't be blamed. Zidongwang was a solo expert after all. There wasn't any expert behind him to give him pointers, nor tell him about techniques to solve the scattered stars game. Naturally, he thought it was best to solve it quickly. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain said with a smile. Humph, among the top 10 geniuses on Universe God ranking list, Duan Lingfeng and 7 Universe King have no backer and they are solo experts too. Why did they know to slowly solve it and accumulate experience but Zidongwang didn't? It's because he was arrogant and got himself too many enemies. They knew that he took a wrong approach but no one was willing to remind him. Plus, even if there was no one who reminded him, he should be able to tell easily. What about God-destroying King Duan Lingfeng and Jian Wushuang, whose comprehension levels are not on the same level if not better than his? Why would the resolving speed of the three of them be faster than him? Why didn't he think about it? Idiot. He's an idiot. The coldly elegant lady humphed. True. If Zidongwang were to be a kinder person and have made some good friends, the others would remind him that he was on a wrong path. Just like Duan Lingfeng. He didn't know anything about Scattered Stars game, but Jian Wushuang had reminded him right at the beginning to proceed steadily and not rush through it. In the end, Zidongwang's human relationship was too bad. Every genius at the scene was watching him like he was a joke. Who was willing to remind him? They let him take the wrong route. Zidongwang thought highly of himself. He saw that Jian Wushuang and the rest fell far behind him and he thought their comprehension level was not high as his. He was a total joke. In the cave, the universe gods were trying their best to solve the Scattered Stars game. Zidongwang's speed continued. In the blink of an eye, 30 years flew past. Phew! Zidongwang let out a breath of relief and slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the chessboard before him that the 521 black chess pieces disappeared. The 521st move is so meticulous. It trapped me for 3 years. Zidongwang frowned. He who desired to lead by a wide margin was stuck at that one move for 3 years. It naturally led him to dissatisfaction. But then,
He glanced at his surroundings and wanted to see how the others were doing. Then his pupils shrunk at the sight. God-destroying King Duan Lingfeng Jian Wushuang, including Xianxia and the others, they have already solved the 500th move. God-destroying King and 7 Universe King solved the 511th move. They were merely 10 moves away from me. How did their speeds pick up so quickly so suddenly? It seems that I have to speed up and quickly solve 600 moves to leave them far behind. Zidongwang felt a sudden pressure. He immediately started to solve the 522nd move. But he didn't know that it wasn't that Jian Wushuang, God-destroying King, or any one of them had become faster, but that he had become slower. On the 521st move, he was troubled for 3 years. But Jian Wushuang and the others? Until then, they have yet to reach any bottleneck. The time continued to fly past. After 50 years, Zidongwang remained at the 540th move, but God-destroying King and 7 Universe King caught up to him successively. They reached the 540th move. They caught up. No. How can I let you catch up with me? Solve, hurry up and solve. Zidongwang immediately panicked. But no matter how anxious he was, he couldn't solve the move. In a few months' time, God-destroying King and 7 Universe King solved the move and stepped foot on the 541st move. Zidongwang, who had been leading by wide margin previously, was finally overtaken. Not long after God-destroying King and 7 Universe King overtook him, Duan Lingfeng, Jian Wushuang, Xianxia, Universe God Luing, Demon King Icefeather, and all the other geniuses in the top 10 on Universe God ranking list also overtook him. Then, even those in the top 20 and the top 30 on Universe God ranking list were above him too. Zidongwang was dumbfounded by the situation. How could it turn out like this? In the blink of an eye, 80 years passed. Many universe gods were gathered in the open space, and the god-destroying king was sitting down with his legs crossed in the center of the crowd. On the chess set in front of him, the 600th black chess piece was dissipating slowly. The 600th move, as expected of the god-destroying king. Out of so many universe gods, he is the first one to solve the 600th move. I am also an expert of the Universe God ranking list. However, until now, I have only managed to solve the 521st move. The gap is really huge. Many Universe Gods at the open space were all gasping. Among the Universe Gods, many of them had lost their confidence and gave up on the test a long time ago. At that moment, they were not solving their chess sets. Instead, they were observing other people's performances. Of course, they were only observing and dared not disturb them. After all, real God Wu Bei had already said, in the 3rd level of cave, if anyone dared to make a move or disturb other people during their test, they would be killed instantly. Inside the vast hall outside the cave, many experts were having a conversation. The God-destroying king has already solved the 600th move, and he is the first to do so. I wonder how many more people will be able to achieve this feat. There are still 20 years, so there should be a few more. The 500th move of the Scattered Stars game is a big threshold. Similarly, the 600th move is also a big threshold. The God-destroying king was the only person who had passed the 600th move so far. However, there were a few people following closely behind him. 7 months later, Duan Lingfeng caught up with the God-destroying king and resolved the 600th move as well. After that, another 3 years passed, and Jian Wushuang also achieved the same feat. The first test had gone on for 90 years, and there were only 10 years remaining in the time limit of 100 years. Out of the universe gods, there were 3 people who had resolved the greatest number of moves. The 3 people were the God-destroying king, Duan Lingfeng, and Jian Wushuang. All of them were currently on the 603rd move, and it seemed that all of them were stuck there. For the Scattered Stars game, the more moves that are resolved, the harder it gets. For a universe god to solve 500 moves within 100 years, he can already be considered a top genius. As for those who are able to solve 600 moves, they are definitely monster-level existences. Such monsters only come by once every million years. However, in this generation, 3 of them actually appeared at the same time. These 3 people are true geniuses. The first white blaze fruit tree will definitely fall into one of their hands. However, I wonder who that person will be.
It should be the God-destroying king. He has the strongest abilities. Moreover, compared to Duan Lingfeng and Jian Wushuang, he was the first person to solve the 600th move. That might not be the case. No matter what, we will be able to see the outcome soon. If I'm not wrong, among the three of them, whoever solves the 603rd move first should be able to obtain the White Blaze fruit tree. I agree. Many experts were having a conversation with one another. However, Jian Wushuang, who was in the center of the open space, opened his eyes, and on the chessboard in front of him, the 603rd black chess piece had already started to dissipate. It's Jian Wushuang. He has solved the 603rd move. It's actually him? Many almighties in the big hall revealed a surprised expression. Previously, they had thought that it was possible for either Jian Wushuang, the God-destroying king, or Duan Lingfeng to win. However, they felt that the God-destroying king had the highest probability, followed by Duan Lingfeng and finally Jian Wushuang. However, who could expect that Jian Wushuang, who they thought had the lowest probability, would actually solve the 603rd move faster than the God-destroying king and Duan Lingfeng? This little kid. If my guess is not wrong, he only started to use his strength after solving the 600th move. The red-haired old man with a horn on his forehead said in a low voice. That's highly possible. The owner of the Sky Sword Mountain also nodded his head and his eyes glowed brilliantly. Be it the God-destroying king or Duan Lingfeng, both of them only started to use their strength at the 590th move, and they stopped advancing steadily. As such, Jian Wushuang was 3 years slower than them in solving the 600th move. However, Jian Wushuang's reserve strength is obviously greater. The outcome is decided. For the first test, the most outstanding person is Jian Wushuang. The first White Blaze fruit tree is his. The other almighties also nodded their heads. For the remaining 10 years, as per what the almighties had said, Jian Wushuang had reserved a lot of strength. After taking the lead from the God-destroying king and Duan Lingfeng, he continued leading. When the God-destroying king and Duan Lingfeng had solved the 603rd move, he had solved the 604th move. While the God-destroying king and Duan Lingfeng were still at the 604th move, he had solved the 605th move. Finally, the time limit of 100 years was up. In the end, Jian Wushuang solved a total of 607 moves. As for the God-destroying king and Duan Lingfeng, both of them solved 604 moves. Jian Wushuang had actually taken 3 years longer than the two of them to solve the 600th move. However, the end result was Jian Wushuang leading the two of them by 3 moves. As such, it could be said that Jian Wushuang's level of comprehension was not really a lot higher than theirs. Instead, it could be said that his understanding of the Scattered Stars game was a lot greater than theirs. After all, he had analyzed with great concentration and solved the small Scattered Stars game before. As for the God-destroying king and Duan Lingfeng, it was the first time that both of them had come across the Scattered Stars game. Therefore, Jian Wushuang naturally had an advantage. If it were his first time coming across the Scattered Stars game, his performance would probably be about the same as the God-destroying king and Duan Lingfeng's. At best, it would only be slightly better. If he could solve another move, it would already be impressive. After all, the God-destroying king and Duan Lingfeng were the kind of super geniuses that appeared once every million years. Buzz. When the time limit was up, the giant chessboard that was floating in the void, as well as the chessboards in front of the universe gods, all started to dissipate. The universe gods, who were sitting in the open space with their legs crossed, stood up in succession. Their scorching hot eyes then looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang. The first White Blaze fruit tree is his. He actually managed to solve 607 steps of the Scattered Stars game within 100 years. That's really impressive. The universe gods were gasping in admiration. However, there was nothing that they could do. The test was a fair competition and Jian Wushuang had used his own abilities to outperform everyone. Hence, the first White Blaze fruit tree naturally belonged to him. I have already done my best. However, the number of moves that I solved is still less than him. The God-destroying king also glanced at Jian Wushuang and he shook his head after that. At the open space, apart from Jian Wushuang, there was one more person who attracted a lot of attention. This person was Zidong Wang. However, Zidonggang was a complete joke in the eyes of many universe gods who were present at the open space. Zidongwang had led by a wide margin at the beginning, but later on, he had encountered hindrances one after another. He would meet an obstacle in every move. When the 100-move time limit was up, Zidongwang had only solved 545 moves. Although the result was considered good amongst universe gods, it was not aligned with his ranking on universe god ranking list. After all, among all universe gods, there were many who had solved more moves than he had, and there was a total of 57 of them. With such a result, Zidongwang was so embarrassed that he wished there was somewhere he could hide. In the lofty hall. Lei Chao, congratulations. There is really a great disciple in Lineage of Star. Not only did Lineage of Star receive 9 white blaze fruits, but you also receive a white blaze fruit tree too. Hehe, all the benefits are taken by Lineage of Star. Real gods from each force and sect, including the Almighties, were looking at Lei Chao. The gazes were rather complicated. There was envy, jealousy, and even greed. Being watched by the burning gazes. Even Lei Chao's facial expression grew strange. He didn't reply to the people before him, nor could he reply to them. He immediately sent an update to Hall Master Yuan. Yuan, hurry up and inform Palace Master. Request him to stop his cultivation and rush here. Lei Chao sounded in a hurry. You want Palace Master to stop his cultivation? Hall Master Yuan creased his eyebrows. Although Jian Wushuang got 9 white blaze fruit from Wu Bei's cave, the Almighties won't take action against him for the few pieces of white blaze fruit without concern for their reputations, right? If it were only a few pieces of white blaze fruits, there'd be no need for Palace Master to come on his own. But the thing is that Jian Wushuang got a white blaze fruit too. It's a white blaze fruit tree. Its value is equal to a few hundred white blaze fruits. Such a precious treasure. I don't think the Almighties can stand the temptation. If Palace Master were to not come personally, I reckon the Almighties will fight over it at the very moment Jian Wushuang exits the cave. Lei Chao said. White blaze fruit tree? Hall Master Yuan was shocked at first, then quickly grew excited. Jian Wushuang got a white blaze fruit tree? Yes. There's a total of 3 white blaze trees in Wu Bei's cave, and he got the first one, Lei Chao said. That's great. Let me inform the Palace Master now. Hall Master Yuan's voice was obviously delighted. Very soon, Hall Master Yuan came before the most mysterious cave dwelling in the boundless Milky Way. Palace Master. Hall Master Yuan stood outside the cave dwelling as he bowed politely. What's the matter? There was an ancient and deep voice from the cave dwelling. This is what happened. Hall Master Yuan immediately told the story. White blaze fruit tree. The little guy from Lineage of Star got it. A surprised voice traveled from the cave dwelling. In the next moment, the entrance of the cave dwelling was wide open. A white-haired ancient figure slowly walked out. I never knew that Lineage of Star had such a chance. The white-haired elderly muttered. A white blaze fruit tree is worth a trip. Just as he said that, the white-haired elderly moved and suddenly vanished from the universe. Hall Master Yuan was surprised at the sight. He immediately sent Lei Chao a message. Lei Chao, Palace Master has already departed personally. However, even with Palace Master's power, he'll require a few days to get to Wu Bei's cave from Starland. Tell Jian Wushuang to not leave from Wu Bei's cave before Palace Master gets there personally. Lei Chao nodded heavily, and there was a great commotion in his heart, but he looked rather composed. As for the jealous, greedy gazes from the surroundings, he didn't worry. He knew for sure that as long as Palace Master came personally, no matter how greedy the people were, no one would dare to cross the line. In the cave, the first test has ended. The blurry image of real god Wu Bei overlooked the universe gods. In the end, his gaze fixed onto Jian Wushuang, a universe god who is able to solve 607 moves in 100 years' time. You are doing very well. You will definitely get one of the 3 chances in the end. Thank you. Jian Wushuang bowed slightly to real god Wu Bei. Then let's begin the second test, real god Wu Bei said, and he waved. There were immediately a few space tunnels that appeared in the air in the void above the open ground. The second test is in the space tunnels. As for the context of the test, it is much easier than the first test. You'll see your opponent the moment you enter the space tunnel. What you need to do is to fight your opponent. The longer you last in the fight, the better. Actually, to be straightforward, the second test is to test your respective powers. Whoever is stronger will be able to get the second white blaze fruit. After hearing what real god Wu Bei said, the faces of the universe gods on the open ground grew strange. They couldn't help but look at one person. The person was God-destroying King. God-destroying King who everyone was looking at smiled too. Strength? Strength-oriented test? One should know that God-destroying King was widely recognized as the #1 universe god in eternal chaotic world. His strength was no doubt the strongest. The second test had yet to start, but everyone already knew the final result. We don't have to compete for this test. A test relying entirely on strength. Who is capable enough to win against God-destroying King? Even Duan Lingfeng and Jian Wushuang couldn't be compared favorably with God-destroying King. Many universe gods sighed with emotion. If Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng were to team up, they could really win against God-destroying King. However, one-on-one, they were definitely not God-destroying King's match. Both of them had a thorough knowledge of themselves. It seems that we don't stand a chance in the second test. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. We don't, but I'd really like to compete with you in this test. Duan Lingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and immediately understood Duan Lingfeng's plan. If so, let's do it. Jian Wushuang laughed heartily. In the second test, he and Duan Lingfeng didn't stand a chance. No one could fight against God-destroying King. Not for the white blaze tree, but to compete with one another. They would try their best to get through the test. In the void, real god Wu Bei spoke. In order to save time, there is no need for everyone to join this test. In the eternal chaotic world, isn't there a universe god ranking list? Whoever is on universe god ranking list can try to challenge. The rest can skip this. As soon as real god Wu Bei finished his speech, he destroyed the hopes of more than 99% of the universe gods. After all, although there were more than 100,000 universe gods present, there were only 100 universe gods with the fighting capabilities to make it into the universe god ranking list. Of course, after knowing the content of the second test, those universe gods did not hold any more hope. Let's begin. Real god Wu Bei signaled the start of the test. Boom! Frightening, destructive aura burst forth abruptly. Under the observation of numerous eyes, the God-destroying King walked over slowly. It was obvious that he planned to be the first one to take the test. In no time, he entered one of the space passages. Everyone in the open space was also waiting silently. As for what the God-destroying King had come across in the space passage, only real god Wu Bei knew about it. After a long time, the God-destroying King finally emerged from the space passage. After that, the universe gods in the universe god ranking list entered the space passages in succession. Even though they knew that did not have much hope, they still did their best in the test. However, it was obvious that the time that they stayed in the space passage could hardly be compared to the God-destroying King. In less than 2 hours' time, most of the geniuses in the universe god ranking list had gone into the space passage. At that moment, Duan Lingfeng, it's our turn now. Jian Wushuang took a glance at Duan Lingfeng who was beside him. Give it your all, Duan Lingfeng said indifferently. Definitely. Jian Wushuang grinned and the both of them moved immediately. When the two of them appeared in front of two separate space passages, it caused everyone at the open space to be in uproar. It's Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. The two of them actually planned to go together. Could it be that they wished to use this test to have a showdown? That's highly possible. They are second and third on the universe god ranking list respectively. However, there is still a debate going on regarding their abilities. Now, are they finally going to challenge one another? The universe gods present were all filled with excitement. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng did not disappoint those universe gods, and both of them entered their respective space passages. Swoosh! With a glowing light, Jian Wushuang appeared in a vast, dark void, and in front of him stood 10 ice figures. When they saw the Jian Wushuang appearing, the 10 ice figures opened their eyes instantly. with a flash of murderous intent, then headed toward Jian Wushuang at the same time. 10 of them. Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted slightly and his soul power burst forth at once, forming a giant, golden divine ape. When Jian Wushuang activated his divine power, 18 shadows appeared at the same time. Swish, 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 swish. Jian Wushuang went all out and fought the 10 ice figures with lightning speed. As he fought, he realized that the abilities of the 10 figures were increasing continuously. The second test is quite similar to the lineage of Star's Supreme Tower. The only difference is that the Supreme Tower has some restrictions and I am unable to display my full fighting capabilities. For this test, I can unleash my full abilities, Jian Wushuang giggled. By relying on his own martial art motion and sword principles, combined with his soul power, Jian Wushuang fought against the 10 ice figures. Time passed by. In the open space, numerous universe gods were waiting quietly. After some time, a shadow appeared from one of the space passages. It's Duan Lingfeng. Duan Lingfeng has come out. But Jian Wushuang is still inside the space passage. The universe gods present all started to have a puzzled expression. Duan Lingfeng also raised his eyebrows. However, in 2 breaths of time after Duan Lingfeng was sent out from the space passage, Jian Wushuang also left the space passage. Jian Wushuang, you have won. Duan Lingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang. I have only stayed inside for 2 breaths of time longer than you. Moreover, I am only able to stay inside slightly longer due to my martial art motion. In this test, my martial art motion has given me a lot of advantage while facing the 10 battle puppets, Jian Wushuang said. What he had said was true. In a battle surrounded by enemies, martial art motion was indeed the most important. Since he was the most proficient in martial art motion, he was able to last longer while besieged by the 10 battle puppets. However, when comparing abilities, Jian Wushuang didn't think that he was stronger than Duan Lingfeng. Perhaps so. Duan Lingfeng nodded his head indifferently and did not say much. In the blink of an eye, all the experts who were confident in their abilities had gone into the space passage to take the test. However, the result was obvious. The person who stayed in the space passage for the longest period of time for the second test was the God-destroying king. He had managed to stay a total of 8 breaths time longer than Jian Wushuang, who came in second for the test. Naturally, the God-destroying king obtained the white blaze fruit tree for the second test. Next is the third test. Since this is the last test, this also means that there is only 1 white blaze fruit tree remaining. Real God Wu Bei chuckled. After his speech, the universe gods present became anxious. The third test was their last chance. If they were to miss this final opportunity, their journey in Wu Bei's cave would come to an end. I must grasp this final opportunity. This is the final white blaze tree remaining and I must obtain it. A number of universe gods present because extremely fired up like never before. At the very moment, even the almighties and real gods from various powerhouses who were in the big hall outside the cave became anxious. Among them, there were people who had obtained the white blaze fruit before. As for the 3 white blaze fruit trees, which were the most valuable treasures in Wu Bei's cave, they had never obtained one before. Universe gods, the third test is a bit special. Are all of you ready? Real God Wu Bei looked down at the universe gods below him with interest. Many universe gods in the open space clenched their fists tightly and their eyes were glowing brilliantly. They had already finished their preparations for the third test. Since all of you are ready, let the third test begin. Real God Wu Bei laughed strangely. In the next moment, a thick white light appeared from the edge of the third level. The white light was extremely beautiful. It looked as if it possessed an infinite amount of magical power, and it covered the open space quickly. Naturally, the universe gods in the open space were also shrouded by the white light. What is this? Is this white light a spell? It's a spell. Furthermore, it's a very wonderful spell. Quite a number of universe gods were muttering to themselves. However, in a split second, many of them realized that the scenery around them had started to change. At the same time, their eyes seemed to have become tired and they closed involuntarily as if they were about to sleep. However, their consciousness was still awake. Swoosh! The universe changed. When everyone opened their eyes again, they realized that they had appeared in an endless black corridor. This is... Jian Wushuang was in the dark corridor too. He was looking at his surroundings. Dreamland. Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted and he could instantly tell that he should be in a phantasmagoria. However, even though he could tell that he was in a dreamland, he couldn't shake off the phantasmagoria forcefully. I can't forcefully shake it off then. I can only let the dreamland change freely. Jian Wushuang was certain about it. Just then, he suddenly saw the light at the end of the dark corridor which was right in front of him. The light was very dim but Jian Wushuang saw a string of hope. That's the exit. As long as I get there, I'll be able to exit this dreamland. Jian Wushuang had already decided. In the dreamland, Jian Wushuang would follow what his heart said without hesitation. Jian Wushuang immediately plunged directly towards the very end of the dark corridor. That very moment, not only him but also more than 100,000 universe gods in the third level were facing the same scene as him. Everyone fell into the phantasmagoria of a dark corridor. At the same time, they also faintly saw the light at the end of their fields of vision. Just like Jian Wushuang, the universe gods immediately understood that the light was where the exit of the dreamland located. It was also the very end of the dark corridor. Hence, all the universe gods started plunging towards the end of the corridor. In the dark corridor, their speeds weren't restrained and every one of them gave full rein to their power. However, even plunging forward with such speed, after 1 day, 10 days, 1 month, they could still barely see the light, let alone reach it. Although the universe gods were shocked, they followed their true will and continued to plunge forward. The dark corridor seemed to be never-ending. Although the universe gods continued to plunge forward, after 1 year, 2 years, and even 10 years, the light at the end of the tunnel still didn't grow any brighter. Very quickly, the universe gods had been traveling in the dark corridor for 150 years. In the dark corridor, a purple-haired, bewitching maiden suddenly slowed to a stop. She looked at the light at the very end of the corridor, which was still very dim, and her eyebrows were tightly knitted. What's going on? I've been traveling forward for 150 years in this corridor, but I have yet to reach the end of it, and I have yet to leave this dreamland. Could it be that I made a wrong judgment? The light at the end of my sight isn't where the exit of the dreamland is. The purple-haired, bewitching maiden thought, and she began to waver in her determination. However, just as she wavered from her action on the open ground of the third level, the purple-haired, bewitching maiden's eyes suddenly shot open. I resolved the dreamland? The purple-haired, bewitching maiden muttered. Resolved the dreamland? Hee. You didn't break it, but you lost the right to continue the test. Real God Wu Bei's voice suddenly rang inside her ears. He spoke with pity. You only stayed in the dreamland for 150 years and you're sent out. You are so fragile at heart. I lost. The purple-haired, bewitching maiden looked at her surrounding in surprise. She realized that everyone else was still keeping their eyes closed under the influence of the white light, besides herself. They were obviously still in the dreamland, but only she was awake. It turns out that I am the first to be eliminated. The purple-haired, bewitching maiden couldn't do anything but smile bitterly. However, not long after she came back to reality, the universe gods around her woke up one after another. What happened? Did we walk out of the dark corridor? The universe gods were shocked, but they quickly understood that they had failed. In the lofty hall outside the cave where all the experts had gathered, they received the updates from the universe gods on the third level who failed. They traveled forward by a few hundred years in the dreamland but had yet to reach the end. However, the moment they were in doubt by a slight bit, they would be kicked out of the dreamland immediately. The Almighties exchanged a look and they quickly had an answer. It's a void corridor. The third test is a void corridor that is aiming at one's mind? Humph, the first test was Scattered Stars game to test one's comprehension. The second test was a strength test. The third test is a mental test. This madman Wu Bei is trying to picking his own disciple. Many experts in the hall creased their eyebrows. They knew about the void corridor. It was designated to test one's mind. The void corridor was boundless and unfathomable. When one fell into the void corridor, the exit seemed to be within his sight. but in actual fact it was unbelievably far away. Forget about traveling forward for a few hundred years. He might not be able to reach the end even after thousands or tens of thousands of years. The void corridor tested if one was firm in their belief. After everyone entered the void corridor, they were certain that the exit was at the end of the corridor. However, when the universe gods had traveled uneventfully over the years but couldn't reach the end, it was inevitable that they started to waver in their belief, but in doubt of their own judgment, they made a mistake. The moment they were in doubt and wavered, the test ended. The universe gods on the open ground who had already woken up traveled for a few hundred years in the void corridor. They were very determined at first. However, as time passed, they started to waver and then were eliminated. Those who were still in the dreamland naturally could stay firm in their belief. On the third level of Wu Bei's cave, as time flew past, there were more universe gods on the open ground who woke up. As everyone had fallen into the universe god Chongqing, you woke up too? A man in purple armor next to him looked up and asked. Yeah, I had no choice. It isn't easy to stay determined as one continuous plunge forwards in such a boring and uneventful manner. The white-haired elderly smiled helplessly. How long have you been traveling in the void corridor? The man in purple armor asked. I wrote down my travel time before I started moving forward. It should have been 1,980 years. The white-bearded elderly replied. 1,980 years? The purple-armored man was shocked and he gasped in admiration. I only walked for less than 800 years on that void corridor before being sent out as I could no longer take it. However, you actually walked for over 1,000 years more than me. This is really impressive. The time in a phantasmagoria and in reality was different. The purple-armored man had walked for close to 800 years on the void corridor. However, in reality that was only over 2 hours' time. Before even achieving 2,000 years, I gave up. This is considered nothing. The people who are still in the phantasmagoria are the ones who are amazing, the white-bearded old man said. Indeed. The purple-armored man also nodded his head and he looked around the area. At the very moment, there was less than 1,000 people who were still in the void corridor and had yet to wake up. These people had probably been walking in the corridor for more than 1,000 years. For 2,000 years, they must continue to stay true to their own objectives and continue walking dutifully. However, this was something that even many real gods could not do. As for the universe gods who were still in the phantasmagoria, discounting their abilities, they were not weak mentally. In the blink of an eye, another day passed. Originally, there were still over thousands of universe gods remaining on the void corridor. However, this number had been reduced to 40. At that moment, these 40 people had been walking for more than 5,000 years in the black corridor. In the open space, all the universe gods who had awakened were surrounding and observing the remaining 40 people. At that moment, among the 40 people, the eyelids of one of the figures moved and opened his eyes after that. Oh, it's Zidongwang? Haha. Zidongwang has woken up as well. Although he is the fourth in the universe god ranking list, his mind is not very strong, is it? A number of universe gods who had woken up a long time ago sneered secretly. After Zidongwang woke up and got to know the details of the situation, his expression became unusually ugly. Damn it! When solving the Scattered Stars game previously, forget the fact that I was behind over 60 people. However, for this third test, which is a test targeted at the mind, there are actually over 40 people who are above me. How can this be possible? This is impossible. Zidongwang was roaring madly inside his own mind and he felt extremely dissatisfied. However, the top experts outside the cave were not surprised by Zidongwang's performance in the third test at all. Although Zidongwang's abilities are not too bad, his mind is actually not very strong. For him to stay 5,000 years in the void corridor, it is already considered decent. However, it is far from enough to tally with the fact that he is ranked 4th on the universe god ranking list. Ignore Zidongwang. I am really very curious about the remaining people. Let's see who will have the last laugh. The experts in the big hall were all waiting in anticipation. Time passed by gradually. Universe gods who could no longer take the dullness of walking for years woke up in succession. Another day passed.
Out of the 100,000 universe gods who were at the third level of the cave, there were only 6 people remaining in the void corridor. These 6 people were the god-destroying king, Duan Lingfeng, Jian Wushuang, Xianxia, Tian Can and universe god Xiaho. There was nothing that could be said about the god-destroying king. His abilities had been recognized as the best. Moreover, his abilities were cultivated from going through massacres for many years. Hence, he had experienced many hardships and killings. With that, he managed to develop an iron-like mind, and such a mind would naturally be in the top few among the universe gods. As for Duan Lingfeng, he was a person who was as cold as ice. Just like Jian Wushuang, he had grown up facing hardships such as countless killings and tragedies. Hence, his willpower was as sturdy as an ice mountain. As soon as he set his mind on something, it would be almost impossible to change it. As for Jian Wushuang, he was an inverse cultivator. Not only had he gone through numerous trainings, he had also experienced 2 inverse cultivation tests. The most noteworthy one was the Reincarnation test, which caused his mind to achieve a fantastic level. Among the 3 levels of the mind, he belonged to the first level at the very moment. At the first level, he had managed to understand his own mind and nature clearly. With that, he could make decisions based on these understandings. Such a feat was considered being at the peak of the first level, and he was very close to the second level. When he entered the void corridor, he made up his mind based on his own understandings. After determining that the light was the exit, he would continue walking there without hesitation as he trusted his own mind completely and persistently. As for Xianxia, before Jian Wushuang rose up to his current position, he was recognized as number 1 in consciousness attacks out of the universe gods. Since consciousness was linked to the mind most of the time, he would usually train his mind at the same time as he trained his consciousness. Therefore, his mind was also very strong. As for Tian Can, he was an expert who rose up quickly during the fight for the white blaze fruit at the second level of the cave. Since he got famous from killing people, he was most likely a cold-blooded person. As such, he had a strong mind and would not change his decision easily. These 5 people who were just mentioned above were top experts of the Universe God ranking list. Moreover, they were within the top 10 of the Universe God ranking list. However, out of the 5 of them, there was still one person remaining. Universe God Xiaho. Universe God Xiaho was an ugly-looking middle-aged man. His abilities were normal, and he had only reached peak Universe God of the 3rd heaven. Disregarding the comparison of him with the experts of the Universe God ranking list, even a random top universe god of the 3rd heaven from the open space could push him back easily. He did not have any special abilities as well. Before this test, he was a nobody and had no reputation. Moreover, not a single person paid attention to him. However, at the moment in the 3rd test, universe god Xiaho, who was an extremely ordinary person, had actually walked with the 5 great experts, namely the god-destroying king Duan Lingfeng, Jian Wushuang, Xianxia and Tianzhu, to the very end. At that moment, he actually stood side by side with the 5 great experts. This was something that had never crossed anyone's mind. Amidst the vast hall, at the very moment, many almighties and real gods from various big powerhouses had very puzzled expressions. Most of them had lost the right to fight for the white blaze fruit tree. After all, the universe gods under them had been disqualified from the 3rd test. However, the universe gods under some of them were still not disqualified yet. Haha! It's Xiaho. It's universe god Xiaho, whom my water moon pavilion hired. A small, short, black-haired old man laughed wantonly, and his laughter reverberated across the big hall. The almighties in the big hall could not help but look toward the black-haired old man. Hey Hun! Are you saying that universe god Xiaho is under the water moon pavilion? How could I have not heard of him before? A strong man with a tough, stocky build questioned in a low voice. The water moon pavilion and the powerhouse that the man belonged to were both on the same piece of land in one of the sanctuaries. As both powerhouses were competing with each other fiercely, they naturally knew each other inside out. Of course you would not know. Universe god Xiaho is not a disciple of the water moon pavilion. In order to save his wife, who has been poisoned, he looked for the water moon pavilion. He then requested for a real god expert who was proficient in making elixirs to make an elixir to save his wife. However, It's a pity that his abilities were only normal and he also did not have any treasures. As such, he could not exchange anything for the elixir. However, at that time Wu Bei's cave appeared. Hence, that real god of my water-moon pavilion decided to try his luck and sent him over. I was just casually saying at first. I never thought Universe God Xiaoho would really come, and that his mental state would so strong that he reached the final stage of the third test. The black-haired elderly from Water-Moon Pavilion said excitedly as his eyes shone. The appearance of Universe God Xiaoho surprised everyone. As time continued to fly past, Tian Can was the first to come back to reality among the 6 finalists. Tian Can had already tried his best. The longer he stayed in the void corridor, the more difficult it was for him to endure. He had no alternative. Right after Tian Can woke up, it was God-destroying king. God-destroying king, who was the number 1 among the universe gods, surprised many as he only managed to make it to that stage. In the lofty hall, the Almighty sighed with emotion. Because of his backer, God-destroying king receives many resources. After he experienced all kinds of hardship, he became unusually strong and his mental state is terrifying too. However, he has a powerful connection to count on. Hence, his mental state couldn't reach its peak and he couldn't leap over. The third test continued. After Tian Can and God-destroying king woke up, there were only 4 of them left. In the blink of an eye, another 4 hours passed and Xianxia came back to reality too. Since then, those who continued to travel in the void corridor were Jian Wushuang, Duan Lingfeng and Universe God Xiaoho. Universe God Xiaoho, it's your call. For your wife. You have to persist and not waver. The black-haired elderly from Water-Moon Pavilion clenched his fists as he bellowed. Just then, he received an update that Universe God Xiaoho had already woken up. He woke up. The black-haired elderly's face immediately grew grave. Then, he quickly sighed and seemed to be disappointed. Forget it. I can't make a preemptive request to get the white blaze fruit tree. Plus, Universe God Xiaoho did try his best. Hey hun, it seems that Universe God Xiaoho didn't strive hard enough for you. The brawny man smiled smugly at the failure of his Universe God. Humph, Universe God Xiaoho didn't make it to the last in the third test, but he was much more outstanding than the Universe God under your command. His wife, we Water-Moon Pavilion would still rescue her. The black-haired elderly said in a low voice. Oh! The brawny man's pupils contracted, but he didn't say anything further. On the open ground on the 3rd level of the cave, countless universe gods stared at the 2 people with bright, sparkling eyes. The 2 of them were the 2 most eye-catching ones in the 3rd test. They were Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. How could it be? Why haven't they come out from the dreamland? It has been so long. It has already been 2 days and 2 nights in reality. It must have been even longer in the dreamland. Universe God Xiaoho, you're in 3rd place. How long have you traveled in the void corridor? Someone asked. To be frank, I only kept on walking forward in the void corridor but didn't record the time in detail. It should be around 105,000 years. Universe God Xiaoho replied. 105,000 years? Oh my goodness! In such boring and uneventful travel, you stayed in there for 105,000 years. Is this humane? Universe God Xiaoho stayed for so long. Then, aren't Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng spending an even longer time in it? How did they do it? Is their mental strength so strong? The 100,000 universe gods on the open ground were astonished. Even God-destroying king, who was extremely strong, couldn't help but steal a glance at Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. He was quietly looking at them in admiration. It had been 105,000 years, and they continued to persist. One should know that they had only been plunging forward blindly in the void corridor for 100,000 years. In the blink of an eye, another 4 hours passed. Then, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng reached the 3 days mark in the dreamland. Just then, the 2 people who stood right in the middle of the open ground that everyone was watching suddenly moved. The 2 of them opened their eyes at the same time. They woke up. They finally woke up. Why did the 2 of them wake up at the same time? The surrounding universe gods' facial expressions grew strange. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng understood, and they exchanged a look. It seems like you and I are the same. We both reached the end of the corridor. Jian Wushuang smiled and asked, "How many years have you walked in the corridor?" 108,000 years. How about you? Duan Lingfeng asked. Same as you, Jian Wushuang smiled. The speed didn't matter when one was traveling in the void corridor. Even if you were plunging forward at the traveling speed beyond a real god, you still had to travel for 108,000 years. But if you were to opt to not plunge forward but slowly walk, you would have to use 108,000 years to reach the end too. The crucial point was that you couldn't waver by any bit within the 108,000 years, and you had to endure the boring, uneventful torture. Obviously, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng had made it. The universe gods surrounding the two of them heard their conversation, and they gasped in admiration. 108,000 years. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng walked in the void corridor for 108,000 years? During the 108,000 years, they weren't cultivating but purely plunging forward. They wouldn't run into anything on their way, only a never-ending corridor. The two of them had held out to the end. The universe gods also could tell from their conversation that they had reached the end of the corridor, and they shook off the dreamland officially to come back to reality. In other words, if there were to be no end to the corridor, they could stay in the dreamland even longer. Just how terrifying were their mental strengths? If I'm not mistaken, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng should have reached the first stage in terms of mental strength and be at a pretty high level. In the lofty hall, the Almighties started discussing. True. To be able to walk to the end of the void corridor, the lowest threshold is to achieve the first stage of mental state. Most of the real gods has yet to even reach the first stage, but they could reach this stage as universe gods. This is unbelievable. It is much more difficult than comprehending a slight bit of power of Heaven Wei. Both Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng are monstrous. Actually, the first stage of mental state, universe god Xia Ho achieved it too. However, he should have just leapt in not long ago, and it has yet to grow solid. Otherwise, he might stand a chance to walk till the end. Regardless, the third test has ended too. It ended, but both Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng passed the test. How will they share the white blaze fruit tree for the third test?